what's going on, people? How's everybody doing? It's my take from reality, James, and
Senior Perspective, Jenny.
All right. This week we have an interesting chapter. It's a relatively brief chapter. Apparently, they didn't want to inundate us with too much information, so Janelle kept it very, very short.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that.
Right? I'm not gonna say nothing.
No, this is like, I don't know, 6 to 9 pages long.
Right.
Chapter ever. I'm like, oh, that's it. Okay, here we go.
So apparently, she was not big on letting people know a whole lot about what was going on with her. And it's ironic too, because I think it's very telling, because this was actually supposed to be the chapter where the wives talked about their approach to how they deal with the kids. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, it's kind of telling that Janelle's page is like, basically, yeah, I have children. And
I wasn't around.
Yeah, right?
I was at the movie theater or at work.
Right. If they weren't at my job, I have no idea what was going on.
Yeah, I was surprised she didn't have anything to really say in this. She just kind of, it's a lot of kind of mirroring what Mary said, but Mary went into detail and had a lot of defense and, explained everything before anybody even knew what she was talking about. And I really expected more from Janelle's than we got this week, but that's all right. We'll still have plenty to talk about, I'm sure.
Right. So what was your overall take of this particular chapter?
My overall take is that Janelle took a back seat for this chapter. Mm-hmm. I think she was poolside at the time. Right. And she was just getting her tan on, and she's like, I am over this book. I don't have a whole lot to say. I feel like she glossed over what was going on with the family, only gave one example, which is the same one that Mary gave, which is interesting because I wonder if, and she didn't really diss Mary about it. So I don't know why Mary was so defensive. I thought with Mary's chapter being so defensive that Janelle would have a few more guns shooting in hers, but she didn't. Right. So maybe Mary's was addressing Christine a little bit more than Janelle, because Janelle, she just kind of, it was Janelle's personality. It was very laid back. It was very, this is how it is, and everything will work out, and just sweet and quiet, and not a whole lot of shots fired.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that's interesting about, like, if you look at it from the perspective of how Mary addressed it as like this hyper dominant person who is extremely defensive, and the way Janelle addressed it, because I'm sure there are things that Janelle could say, particularly about how her kids were addressed and how her kids were talked to and dealt with. But like she says in the chapter, or at least I should say how she reiterated in the chapter, something she had said before, she doesn't like to create any drama. She doesn't like to create any difficulty, and she wants everything to be smoothed over. So this is her way of doing that, where she's not really coming out saying anything that's going to, rock the boat at all. She's not trying to upset anybody. She's taking it real low key and kind of trying to be as generous. I'll even say that she's being extremely generous with how she interprets the other parents and the other parents' approach to her kids.
Yeah.
Whereas Mary was a little more, she was putting it on the line, I thought.
Yeah, she was. And I don't think, I'd have to think back for a second. How could I not forget? It was only like 6 pages long. But I don't think she even addressed Robin in it at all, did she? I mean, she kind of just sort of talked in general about how the family handled things. And there was a little bit of, even when she talked about a situation that is Mary, she said other wives, and she made it plural. So she didn't, we threw nobody under the bus. There was only one example, and it was the one that was in Mary's chapter, but Mary may have been writing about it in relation to Christine. So then Janelle felt like she needed to address it because it was her son, Logan, that we were talking about, but she didn't really, she's just sort of like, well, whatever. I mean, she had a little bit, I guess, to say, a little bit of insight in here, but yeah, she really, really was Switzerland in this chapter.
Yeah. It is very generic. Like the chapter I thought was extremely generic with how she approached it, because you had the whole well, we have five adults now, and that's where she kind of talked about Robin. And
True.
they're coming from different cultural backgrounds, different upbringings. And so our experience in how to deal with kids and our expectations on what to allow kids to do is a little bit different, but it's none of it's bad.
Right.
And I hate to tell you, like as a parent, like there are situations where you try to be open-minded with different approaches, but there are some approaches you look at and be like, yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's not a winning approach. And so it's weird that she doesn't have any, like, if you have a difference of opinion, you have a difference of opinion. But I think that this is like, again, we talk consistently about communication being so important. I think this is one of those areas where you have to have that conversation, particularly before you start having children, is beneficial. Like before you start making babies with somebody, you might want to talk about how you plan on raising them,
right?
Because that'll be the source of a lot of headbutting and a lot of issues and late night conversations.
Yeah, and this chapter also highlighted for me. I started thinking, this is the time that I guess I would like to have actually a Cody chapter on his perspective, because it's like, where's the father in all of this?
Right.
The wives are struggling to figure it out, and I'm not sure they're doing a great job at it. And their philosophy, I don't think, is working really well for the family, in that you handle it, but then when you handle it in a way I don't like it, I'm going to not talk to you for many years. It's just sort of like, it's just not really working. And I feel like Cody may have just been completely hands off in the parenting, that he was just the fun guy, and intentionally, like that's all he wants to be, because that's like his maturity level. He just wants to play with them. He wants them to fawn over him. He wants to receive love. But he's not really good at knowing how to give it or how to have structure in life. I mean, his life is chaos. So clearly, if he can't get his own person in order and understand how to get from point A to point B without like having his hair flying out and things coming out of the car and tires exploding, and like if we can't really get from one point to another, how can we expect him to raise 13 children? So yeah, I think he just said, you guys are the experts. You guys have it. I'm just going to show up and sit in my chair and wait for my food to be prepared, and little kids can come sit on my lap and tell me how much they missed me and how much they love me. And I think that was really his role, which is why I would have loved if he was forced to write a chapter about it, because I'm like, so what do you think, Cody? I would love to know if he would just BS his way through the whole thing, or if he would just talk about what he saw the wives doing, or if he would just admit, listen, that wasn't my domain. Didn't he say he never changed a diaper? Didn't somebody say he never changed it? Christine, maybe?
Wow.
I think somebody said, Christine said, Cody never changed a diaper. That wasn't his role. So if he's not going to change a diaper, he's not going to discipline him either. He's going to show up, eat food, and play.
Well, because I think that that's part of the issue too, is that, there is a struggle that I think that Cody presents early on, where he tries to hold himself out as kind of this man's man, and using the traditional terms of masculinity and what men are supposed to contribute to a family, particularly to children, then using that, especially when you do like the boilerplate television version of washed out version of what you think families should look like, then the father has very little to do with the kids, because the children and child rearing is the mother's domain. So even with, the sad part with that is that it takes away a huge, it takes away a lot of responsibility from the father's shoulders, because he's not responsible for the children, but it sees the children as a burden. And by seeing your kids as a burden, you miss out on a lot of opportunity and a lot of life fulfillment that you could obtain just by having kids in your life. So you're not a part of their life because, you don't want to be burdened by having them around, but you're also not given the gift of having them around, seeing that new perspective on life, seeing the world through young eyes as opposed to how you grew up and how you learned to accept the world. And that's one of the benefits of being around children, is that children have a fresh view of the world that we sometimes forget about because we pretend like, just my personal perspective. I think that a lot of folks will look back on the world, look at the world and say, when I was a young person, it was completely different. Children respected adults and all that, kind of thing. But it was the same way when we were kids. It's just that the world seemed like an exciting, amazing place because we were young people in that world.
Yeah.
And now that we've been around for a little while, we've gotten used to it. We've taken some things for granted, and maybe we become a little more jaded. One of the benefits of having children is that you get to experience that world through their eyes. You know what I mean? And just seeing how they explore it. And that's one of the sad parts about approaching it in a way from a male, from a guy's perspective as a father. If you miss out on that, you're missing out on more than just changing diapers and, talking to kids. And if your only job and your only role is discipline, then you're limiting your experiences with those kids because those kids only know you as the guy who comes around when it's extreme fun, time to do something really fun, or when there's trouble.
Yeah.
And so what does that really imprint on your kids?
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad on him if he never changed a diaper, then one, you were lacking as far as your partnership in that role, because to put it all for one person is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But two, you missed out on a lot with your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have two comments on that. First of all, if anyone knows what I'm talking about, if they heard the same thing, because I can't even tell you where I know that bit of where that information came from at all in my brain. So write it in the chat if any of you have heard that before too, especially if you know where it was. I want to say it was like an interview with her. So I don't know though. I don't know. But in terms of the stereotypes and the male patriarchy society of conservative Christianism, if you will, that he touts himself being raised in, and specifically Mormon and now specifically AUB, that culture of the wives do the wife duties and I do the man duties. Okay, fine. So if that's his philosophy, that's his philosophy. I work so hard. If he was really working 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, or whatever it was the book said early on, fine. So you're not doing a lot of the parenting because you're not there and you're kind of filling in on the weekends or for 1 day a week. Okay.
Right.
But Cody quit working right when the show started. He didn't have a job, really. I mean, he kind of says he had a job, but like he didn't have a job. TLC was his job. Mary had a job. That was somebody who had a job. That was a job. And Janelle has a job. Like, and Christine got a job. Like they started hustling. And like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to work. The family fund goes to Robin. So we're going to have to work if we want things for our kids. So they started finding whatever direct selling thing, whatever that they got involved in. So they were working. Robin and Cody, really, since the show began, not much of anything. And so that's the most disappointing part about the fact that he's so hands off and he just kind of shows up whenever willy-nilly and doesn't really know what's going on. I'm like, what else are you doing to fill your time if you're not with your children? 16, 17, is it? 18 children. Well, 17 now, but was up to 18. Is that right?
18, yeah.
It got up to 18 children at one point. And then of course they all started moving away. So the numbers started going down, but that was frustrating to me that, yeah, if he does think, well, that's not my role. Well, your role is also to be the provider.
Right.
Didn't do it. Right. Did a horrible job at it when you were trying to do it. Couldn't provide. Janelle was the provider, which is fine. I'm perfectly fine with it. But for him to then not take on more of an active role in the raising of the children, I mean, let's step aside and say maybe it's for the best. So in the long run, maybe the kids are all better for it. But just in the philosophical view of Cody kind of having this patriarchal idea of how his family should be, then that frustrates me. But I also have to say, as you were talking about him missing out because of seeing the world through child's eyes, just this week, I came across this little park. And my instant gut reaction was, oh, my kids would love this. Okay, my kids are in their 20s now. 2 of them are married. And I still instinctually want to take my kids to show them this cool place. Like, oh, this is a place we could have spent 3.5 hours with. I would have packed a lunch and they would have run here and they would have climbed on that and they would have done this and we would have taken this path and seen where it would have gone. And oh, they would have had the time of their lives. Like, we would love exploring new places around town and even outside of the town. And it just made me smile then. And I couldn't help but to smile as you were talking about that too, because it is so true. Like, the one part that I didn't realize until everyone says, oh, kids are better than anything. You love your pet. You have no idea until you have a child. And okay. I intellectually knew all that. I always worked with children, so I was familiar with them and that. But yes, having your own is very different. And that I would get just as hyped up and stoked to go someplace because I knew they were going to experience it for the first time, and just watching their joy and their eyes wide would bring me an incredible amount of joy. I remember the first time I took my son, this is now with, Instagram and Facebook photos, people are taking photos of themselves and of everything all the time. But back in the day, let's go back now a good 15 years ago, before there was any of that. Photos were standard. Here's the castle at Disney World. Here's the character at Disney World. Here's they were just sort of here are the places that we went to. And I remember consciously when I took my son, just my son and I, we went on a mom and me trip to Disney World when he was 5 years old. And I saw Disney in a way I'd never seen it before, because I'd gone twice before, but it was with my older girls, and they're only 18 months apart. So they were kind of like, and then, there was like 4 years, and then there was Zachary. So the girls we'd go every 3 or 4 years. And it was a whole different experience. It was all about castles and princesses and pretty things and Tinkerbell. And, we found everything girly there was, and there's plenty of it, and then did the other stuff as well. And I went with my son, and I felt like I went to a completely different amusement park because we didn't look for a princess. We didn't care about Tinkerbell. It was about Pirates of the Caribbean. It was about, they have like this video game with cards that you put up, and it defeats and shoots characters, and you have to find the hidden paths to get to these things, and you gather points. Like, it's like a card video game kind of thing that I was just like, was this even here? I didn't even know. But somehow we stumbled upon it, and the rides that he would want to do, it was just I saw the other half of Disney. And I remember on that trip, starting with the very first ride, I thought I took my girls the first time they went to Disney on It's a Small World. So I thought, I'm going to take him there first, because that was sort of like what I did with the girls. We're going to go on It's a Small World first because it's a classic. It'll drive you nuts and you'll be singing the song all day, but you have to do it. You have to do it first because it's a classic. So we went on It's a Small World, and he was looking around. So I wanted to take a picture of him on the ride to show this was our first ride too. And his mouth was agape, and his eyes were so wide as he was looking around. So I ended up getting like multiple different pictures of him like that. And then eventually I thought, I'm going to do this on all the rides. So I have his expression in his reactions to shows and movies and rides and seeing things for the first time. And it is the best scrapbook to go back to, because you can't help but go through it and just get excited and feel that joy of seeing something through a child's eyes. So yes, that being said, Cody missed out.
Yeah.
And those were his favorite years. By the time they were teenagers, he was done with them. He had no use for them. Once they got a mouth and they talked back and had opinions and weren't all about dad is number one in the world, then he didn't have anything to give them.
They moved on. Well, I think that it's kind of interesting too, that because even in your assessment, one of the examples you used was, the experience that you share with your son. And I always equate it this way. I think that when you deal with kids, a lot of people think that you have to do a lot for children in order for you to experience or give your kid a good experience.
Yeah.
I think that kids don't necessarily need a lot of, kids absolutely don't need a lot of materialism. They don't need a lot of expensive trips and things of that nature. What kids remember about you is how you make them feel. That's what they hold on to. So when they get older, it's not that, mom took me to here and Bermuda and Bahamas and Hawaii and Europe and that. It's how you made them feel during the time that you spent with them. That's what they hold on to, and that's what they remember about you. So if you make them feel safe, secure, you make them feel like they have a good time with you, then when they look back on that time with you, that's where they're bound to you. Now, in a situation where you don't spend time with them and you don't make them feel a certain way, and if anything, you make them feel absent, vacant, and vapid because you're not present, then what happens is, when they get older, they don't have allegiance to you. And you find yourself yelling at your ex-wife on a porch talking about she knifed you in the kidneys because she's taking all your kids away. And the part of the reason why she's able to take your kids away is because when you had the opportunity to make them feel wanted, needed, and you want them to be around, you didn't take that opportunity. So when they got older, they outgrew you and they moved on. And I think that that's part of what we see in the culmination of where Cody feels this huge sense of betrayal about his kids not choosing him. But here's the secret. When they were kids, you didn't choose them. And so the shoe's just on the other foot. They're just giving you back what you gave them. They're just returning what you sowed into them. And I think that that's one of the sad parts about watching a lot of this, because it's reminiscent, not just in Sister Wives, but you can see it in different families all over the country or around the world, I guess. But you can see it all over the place where people don't invest in their kids and then think because they have this name or title, mom, dad, uncle, grandfather, whatever the case may be, they don't invest in the kids, but then they expect the kids to have some allegiance to some title. That title doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because when kids are young, they're a lot like dogs. They'll keep coming back because they have that need to have a connection. So whether you're giving it to them or not, if you're just smiling because you're receiving all the love and affection from them, then they're happy with that. Like, oh, all right, that's the best we can get. Then we'll take it because that's all we know. And then eventually, when it gets to the point that they're not going to keep doing that, I don't think he realized he wasn't giving, he wasn't pouring into them. He wasn't pouring into his wives either. Eventually he lost them too. Like, really?
Where y'all going?
I know. He's got nothing left but Robin and the kids. And I mean, it seems like he may have learned from his past because it feels like he's spending a lot of time with Saul and Ari. He drives them to school every day. He makes their breakfast every day. It seems like he does everything while Robin's sleeping.
Right.
She's too tired from all her shopping all night long. So, I mean, I feel like maybe just by default, because Robin's like, you will do this.
Right. And she has that higher level of demand.
Right. Yeah. So he might with them, with those two younger ones. I don't, it's hard to do the whole blended family thing and know where those kids are. Like, I mean, they just seem like they're nice kids. So, I'm sure that they like him well enough. But luckily it seems like they still also like their father, or at least Dayton does, their biological father. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the shame of it too, is that, part of what happens also is that you had struck something that kind of struck me, was that you said something that struck me. I don't know if I said that properly, but ultimately, when you look at it, as the kids are young, you are their experience. But as they get older and they start to experience more of life and their friends and even people that they start dating and they start interacting with their significant others in their family, and they say, wow, your dad is around a lot, or you're super involved with our kids in a way that my father was not involved with me. And that can cause like a, division and separation as well, because you realize that maybe the household that you grew up in and the life and lifestyle that you have, where you were saying that, wow, he's really involved. You start to realize that, whoa, this dude wasn't involved at all. Like he might have came to some of the football games and wrestling matches for some of the boys. And so he was around for that. But where was he when you were having choir practice or dance practice, or you were going off to cheerleading, or you had to meet up with some friends and you needed a ride? And he told you, well, I don't have time because I'm busy. And then he's doing something else. Like these are the little things. And it seems kind of nitpicky. And I get that. It seems kind of nitpicky. But these are the small things that turn into big things later on.
Yeah.
And I think that if you don't invest that time, and it's sad, I mean, if I'm right and if things are as they appear, at least to me, and this is how he approached it, then it explains a lot as to where the kids are and why he experienced such absence with the other children. Why they don't come around and spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah. I heard recently that I've been really slacking. I do have a subscription to McKelty's Patreon. It's just been a crazy couple like last month. And so I think it's been weeks before I clicked on it. But I heard somebody recently make reference to the fact that even she is no longer talking to Cody. So I have to catch up. I have to go back and start watching. So I can let the peoples know exactly what you said. But yeah, my understanding is she's going to go ahead and move to North Carolina with Maddie. And so that's bye Cody.
Yeah, and she was kind of the last vestige, because she was on between her and Tony. They were defending Cody and Robin and their relationship and everything that they had going on. Yeah. They were the ones who were constantly saying, like, oh, you don't understand everything that's going on. And even though my mom was, she's really popular on the internet, she had faults too, and she contributed to the downfall of the family as well. So they put a lot on Christine. Yeah. And, but it's interesting to see that what I always thought in that relationship is that, and I'm an outside person looking in, I don't know their day to day, but from what I saw, it's easy to contribute to a relationship like that as long as you're on their side. The minute you start to disagree with anything that, a couple like Cody and Robin appear to be on screen, the minute you start to disagree with them, the minute you start to say anything against things that they have going on, that's when you get cut off. That's when you're no longer useful. Your relationship relies and is centered around the fact that you're useful to me. And the second you stop being useful and or supportive is the second our relationship stop existing. If you ever become critical of me, then you're being toxic and you're being dramatic and you're bringing drama and we can't agree and I can't have you around because you're ruining my life. So, yeah, I mean, I think maybe she hit those things.
Yeah.
Because he did have that weird part where Christina said, they were sitting around the table. This is the season 18 before she started talking about dating. And she said that, well, I didn't feel like I was attractive because your dad wasn't really attracted to me. And all McKelty said was, no, Mom, you're beautiful. And then Cody was on the tell-all talking about, she betrayed me. She betrayed. How dare she call her mother beautiful?
I know. She should have buckled down and said, yes. I don't know why he ever married you, Mom.
Right.
I mean, come
You're
on.
ugly as sin, Mama. Like, that's what he expected her to do. It's crazy.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, that just goes to show you how distorted and warped his thinking was and how he really felt that McKelty and Tony blindly had his back. And I will say that they did for a good period of time. And before this past month anyway, I have been seeing a lot of cracks in McKelty, but not Tony. Like, I feel like Tony was still riding hard, and he was like, well, I know people in this scene were complaining about this, but that's not how I see it. And McKelty kept correcting him and saying, well, what you didn't see in that scene is, something blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, nobody else saw that either. Well, they know about it. Like it's the truth of what's happened. It's gotten out that this all happened. And so, yeah, I'll be interested to see kind of what their train of thought is right now, because I had seen the cracks starting, but I just thought they were cracks and little fissures that were probably going to take a long time to actually have a break occur. But it sounds like maybe that happened and escalated even quicker. I mean, how long can Cody go? If he starts to see McKelty starting to defend her mom on Patreon or hears about it through other people, he's going to lose his cool. He can't keep it together. He expects blind loyalty. That's what he expected from his wife, like a patriarchal system of you do as I say, you fall in line with my will, and all will be okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of sad too, because if that's like that kind of blind loyalty, I for one have never really been a fan of that kind of thing, just because like I'd rather have people be honest with me because it helps. Like if you have a lot of people who are just, I mean, we talk about was that P. Diddy stuff. Like I was doing that for a little bit, and as things start to spark back up, I'll probably comment on it more. But half the problem with a lot of people who are in power, the biggest problem they have is they surround themselves with people who don't ever say, "Hey, we need to stop. This doesn't make any sense. We need to cut this out. This is not a good look," or whatever the case may be. And that's kind of where Cody is. Like, if you surround yourself with a bunch of people who are going to say that everything you did was okay, take the position that Tony had. Like, even though the whole dress gate was a terrible look, terrible look, you turn around and say, no, I don't see what the problem is. That was awesome. What he did picking out the dress. No, you're not paying attention to what's going on.
And he actually blamed them down the road. Can't believe that she made such a big deal out of that. How did she make that about her? It was a special moment for us. Like, twisted the story. I mean, that is a classic narcissistic trait right there. That when you've done something wrong, you can't apologize, but you'll find a way to twist the story around and somehow make it the other people who are accusing you, it's their fault, or they're wrong for calling you out on it. Like, what's wrong with you? That type of thing. So, yeah. And I just heard again. Now, where did I hear this? It was 3 days. Like when Christine walked off the set because she was so upset about that wedding dress situation. Oh, it was in the book. It was in the book. 3 days before she returned. 3 days. I'm like, that is some serious hurt. And then for her to feel like that, and for Cody later on to keep doubling down and saying, I can't believe how cruel Christine was in that scene and how selfish she was. Because of her reaction to what Cody and Robin had done in that situation. Specifically, at least she told Robin that it was mostly Cody, not really Robin, that it was Cody and I get that.
Well, I think it's accurate. I think because a lot of times I can see in a scenario like that where one wife will blame the other wife and forget to hold the husband, who is eternally involved with all of it, responsible for his part of it. And there is a portion of that we can't forget, because there's so many layers to that whole Dressgate thing that just really rings out, and it kind of demands that we be honest about it. Like, it's not just about their union, especially if you're going to waste. If you tell me that it's just about you, and if I'm Christine and you tell me that this wedding is just about Cody and Robin, then that's one thing you got to learn to deal with. You got to be able to handle it, and that's just the way it is. But if you invite me into it only to find out later that your invitation was a lie and a deception to try to call favor with me, then I'm going to have a problem with that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you told this lie because you wanted me to trust you. Now, when I find out it's a lie and you're mad, now you're mad that I don't trust you. Like, are you crazy? Like, of course I don't trust you. I have more reason not to trust you. I didn't trust you before, but I damn sure don't trust you now.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's bizarre on so many levels. And that would have to be, I mean, they had to have really pressed pause on their trust in Robin as well in that situation for her to pretend like she was going to pick out the dress. I think the whole thing was planned. I don't think it was that she didn't find anything that day. And then magically she happened to find it the next day or whenever she went again. And Cody just happened to call while she was out.
Right.
And that's how, like, now they planned the whole thing. I don't even believe it. I think that whole thing is a lie. I think that they went in separate cars just in case they got caught. But it was all planned for them to go together. So for them to know that all went down pre-wedding, I mean, it has to make you think, well, how can we trust anything? And Christine said that at the end, like, I'll never be friends with Robin because I can't trust her. Well, that was the very first thing that we saw. I mean, I don't know, there could be more, but as far as what we saw it happening pre-wedding. That she was already not going to be trustworthy in this relationship with everyone, and she was going to be hiding secrets and lying.
Yeah. Well, because even with that, the first part is like I think that, like, as a kind of close that circle, I think they actually picked the dress. This is just my suspicion. I don't have anything to prove, but this is just what I suspect. I suspect that they had already picked the dress. Like, Cody and Robin had already picked the dress. The dress was already in the box. It was already had. They knew what they were getting, and it was done. And then she went on the trip with the wives just to make them feel good about the situation and feel like they're being included.
So you thought the dress was picked out before the wives?
Right.
Could be.
Yeah, they already had it. It was already nailed down what they were getting, and then she just took them out and like, what do you think it is? What do you think of that? And it was just a good time. The issue with the distrust, though, is that if you look at it, essentially what the wives learned from that interaction right off the gate was that not only could Robin try to keep a secret from them and be deceptive, she out and out lied to them. What they learned is that you lied to us. You're a liar. And so why would I trust you if you tell me that something is important to you, we go out and do the thing that you say is important, and I find out it's a lie, that it's not, it doesn't mean anything to you. Then everything that you say after that is suspect. That's what I mean. One of the things I always kind of tell my kids: character, honor, integrity, pride. Like with as far as character and integrity, the only thing that I ask my kids is that if you do something wrong, and everybody's going to do something wrong, have a reason why you did it. And understand that if you do anything like lie, cheat, steal, or anything of that nature, understand that you are trading your integrity for that thing. Make sure it's worth it. Because once somebody sees that you are a liar or they stop trusting you, they don't trust you. Anything you say at that point becomes a question. So if you tell me up is up, then I have to question, well, does he know what down is? You know what I mean? Because I'm not sure, because I have an experience now that you're dishonest. So you want to make sure that before you start trading off your integrity, it's a dumb, and it seems silly, but trading your integrity for a dress and a dress experience, and that damages your relationship moving forward, then to me, it's a silly thing to do. It's a silly exchange. Like you didn't have to do it. If she decided that she was going to go pick the dress with Cody, what were the wives going to say? They would have said anything. Yeah. The only reason why they were mad was because you lied to them.
Yep.
That's the only reason they were mad.
Absolutely.
Big shout out to Daisy Rez, $1.99 super chat. Christine saw Tony. That's why he's on Cody's radish.
Radish. It's vegetable.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Daisy.
Thank you, Daisy. But that's I think that might be it too. And there could be other reasons as to why Tony likes, Cody and Christine, or Cody and Robin, or cares for Robin. But you just have to be, and this is kind of where integrity comes in too. If you're fair with your observations, then your observations have credibility. If you just like Robin more, so anything she does, you try to throw her some protection, then your credibility is shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would have never been able to trust her after that. I really wouldn't, especially the way that she was so stoic at that moment. She didn't even look like, you can tell she has been in situations where she just lied her way out of it in the past and got away with it. She was stealth-like almost about it.
Right.
She's just like, that was just an experience. Like, you could tell at first she was shocked at Cody. Like, she was not happy that Cody spilled the beans. But then, boy, could she jump. She was quick to her feet to then say, I didn't want him to say anything to ruin the experience that we had as well as what I had with him. Those were both precious, like blah, 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 words, to try to talk around it. But I was like, oh, that was quick off the cuff.
Right.
I would not be able to do that. I'd be like, ooh. Okay, you got me.
Well,
I don't even know what to say. Like, I am not good at lying, so I just don't do it.
Right. Well, I mean, but that's also one of the things that lying is one of those things that nobody's good at lying unless you practice it. And so the fact that you have the ability to be able to turn it around so quick, I don't want, like, it could lead to the fact that you're either hyper intelligent or you're just a dishonest person.
Well,
and you're trying to find that, you're finding that crack to where you could, because all she did was she turned it around. Then all of a sudden she's the victim in this scenario. Like, what? Wait a minute, huh?
Yeah.
You went out lied to me. Now I should feel bad for you because you're crying more than I'm crying.
That's a really good point. Because there's liars who are just really highly intellectual people and very good with words, and they can just come up with the story to go ahead and explain away anything. But then there are liars who are just good at it because of practice. I mean, anybody can be good at anything if they practice it, right? Didn't Jordan say he was terrible all through middle school at basketball?
And then, middle school and high school. You got
middle school and high school. Okay, there you go. And then look at him. So with practice, if you put your mind to it, you can get good at it. And I think it served her well in her life to be able to lie. She could get things that she wanted by lying. I mean, all the hiding of all the stuff that she bought and the credit card statements and the packages and all that. I mean, she has done it forever. I'm sure when she had sex before marriage, she wasn't telling everybody about it ahead of time and getting permission, So, I mean, it probably started early on in her life and was all throughout her life. And once she saw that she could get what she wanted, she just kept going with it. And eventually it just rolls off her tongue. So you just can't believe things that come out of her mouth.
Right. And you know what? And it is weird too, because one of the things that I've always kind of felt with Robin was that she has that skill to where, well, I don't know if it's really a skill, but she's practiced, she's learned in the art of victimology. Like, she can always turn a situation around to where somehow she's suffering from it, and this terrible thing happened to her, and everybody should feel bad for her.
Yes.
But it's just like, for me, that would be one of the things that would have turned me off to the entire situation. Because if you can do that, and especially with something that means as little as this, then you can do that with other things. And one of the things that I noticed about her even early on is that anytime that somebody had to come out and give their perspective or their position on some things, she always kind of fell back and let everybody else go first. So she wanted to see where everybody was before she said what her opinion was. Like, she was never.
Yes, and if she was,
she never came out first.
Yeah, you got me all excited now. I'm all revved up now, James. Just recently, I saw another episode too, and it reminded me of another situation. I'm like, there are times when she is specifically called out and asked her opinion on something, I'm going to withhold it. I'm not going to say, like it with Coyote Pass, when they were all visiting Coyote Pass, and Tony said that he didn't like, what was the name of the other property they were looking into? It escapes me, but they were deciding between
or something like that.
Cottonwood. That's it. Yes, Cottonwood. So they were at Cottonwood, and people were saying they really enjoyed it and they liked all the trees and this is closer to town. And all of a sudden the ball started rolling that, ooh, Cottonwood is looking really good. And then Tony says, and I actually clipped this too, because I thought I'm going to do a video on this. Tony said, and I didn't even remember this. He said, yeah, I don't really like it. And they're like, and he goes, well, neither does Robin, who's behind him, hiding behind the group. And she goes, what? No, what? I didn't say it. What are you talking about? He goes, well, you said you didn't like it either. And she's like, no. And then she goes, I don't know. I'm just going to reserve my thoughts until the very end. Like, so when she got called out to like, okay, speak your mind, still it was, no, I'm not going to do it. Because my MO is I am always the last to speak or I don't speak. And I just let what everyone else says ruminate kind of about the one house situation. Don't think she ever wanted the one house situation. You have never seen her say, I can't wait for us all to be in one house together.
Right.
Just never happened. It never happened. And so she just kind of sat back and thought, I'm just going to let it all work its way out. And I don't even think she was in Cody's ear at the time, because I think Cody really wanted the one house. And I don't think she did want the one house. So I think she just thought, if I just sit back long enough, we can let Christine fall on the sword in the very end. I'll just stay silent and not say much. And Mary was basically not saying much because she was in such an awkward situation after the catfishing thing too. And she didn't really want to go. So there were kind of two of them on the fence, one that wanted it, one that didn't. And she thought, in the end, I'll only speak up if it looks like Cottonwood is where we're all moving to, because that's not what Robin wanted. And Robin gets what Robin wants. So she has learned this part of the whole liar thing too. She's very conniving and very deceptive to be able to have that kind of evil skill where in this situation, silence is going to be best. I'm going to save my opinion and get into Cody's ear for other times when I need to use it, because eventually they'll make a mess out of each other. So yeah, I just found that when I was watching that again, I'm like, I don't remember that, with her just saying, oh yeah, I'm just reserving. I'm waiting to the very end. I know people are giving their opinions, but I'm going to wait to the very end.
Right.
Oh, I was so angry.
Because even then, she never gave her opinion. Like, she never gave her opinion on Coyote Pass. Even when they had they divided Coyote Pass up originally with the original division, she stayed quiet. Then she got all bent out of shape about the section that Cody was going to put her in. And she stormed off talking about, I got to go find the house anyway. And that was at a point where she snapped at Mary, because Mary was saying that I never said that I wanted you to pick last and And then she snapped at Mary and said, well, I'm done. I'm walking off. Well, can I give you my perspective? No, not right now. And she left. And then once she left, and this is one of those things that I would have, even as Christina Janelle, I'd have like, what? Because she left. And then after Mary left, because she too had to go find the house. Once Mary was gone, all of a sudden, here comes Robin back on the scene to clear the air and talk about what's going on. And what she was able to accomplish was she guilted Janelle and Christine into giving up their rights on the piece of property that they had all agreed on that they were going to have. And they were going to start afresh. And at that point, it's my belief that Robin jumped into Cody's ear, because that's what she does. Like, she doesn't give her perspective. She just waits till everything is settled. Waits for everybody to give their perspective. She figures out where she wants to be. She jumps into Cody's ear on a one-on-one, and then she uses Cody to vanguard her position. With regard to the one house thing, she never came out and said whether she was for or against. You can go back through the whole 18 seasons, and she never actually laid down where she was. She just asked the question about, well, what is the one house like? She didn't want the one house. You wanted that? That's because Cody was all, I knew I had to break up with Christine because she didn't want the one house. Really? I mean, I didn't understand what it was all about. Why didn't she want it? you know, she didn't, like you said, she wasn't excited about moving into one house. Mary, I think she would have moved into one house if she could have had a relationship with Cody. But like Christine, Mary didn't want to move into one house and sit there and watch him bounce to everybody else's house but hers, because he wasn't darkening her doorstep at that time. So
Right.
she wasn't trying to move into one house. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, she was trying to move into the one house because that way she would have connection to him more, you
Right.
know. But
Yeah. 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 I'm sorry. I'm distracted by your comment on vanguarding her position. I just thought that was a fabulous use of words. I haven't heard somebody use the word vanguard, except for like, I don't know, aren't there mutual funds that are vanguard?
yeah.
So I was just like, oh, that's a good expression. And then I got lost. I'm like, I gotta throw that into my vocabulary pot.
Right.
I haven't heard that in ages.
Right?
It's taking me back to English in college.
Right. You'll be speaking Jamesism or whatever.
Mhm.
Cody and speaking James.
That's right. Very different. That would be a funny video. Speak
Right.
Cody, speak James. Very different.
Right. The weird statements between the two.
Yeah.
So when you were looking at the chapter, did
Mhm.
you see anything in there that you thought was insane? Like, I thought that, like, starting off the when I speak about the chapter being like very general,
Mhm.
starting out, Janelle says the beauty of living in a polygamous family is that we truly get to embody the principle that is, it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm.
Our family is that village. Like, it is a lot of generalities like that. I
Mhm.
think that flows through the entire chapter.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
essentially, what she's saying is, I like going to work, and Christine helps me with my
Mhm.
kids. Like,
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and that was an example of it takes a village, right? I mean, the village
right,
didn't happen anymore when you brought Robin in. Then it was, sort of like the town hooker that was taking the money away from
right.
because the husband was shelling it out to somebody else who wasn't contributing to the family at all, was just servicing the husband. That's sort of what her role ended up being.
Yeah.
But early on, she was making the most money. She basically, they explain in here financially that all the wives handled all their own finances, with the exception predominantly of the mortgage. And we learned in other chapters that Janelle and Cody, whatever he could contribute, covered the mortgage. So Janelle was covering the mortgage for everybody. And then she was having her portion to pay all the rest of the bills, as everyone else had their own portions too. So she really was the one that was, and happy to do it. Happy to do it. She loved working. She was upset when she wasn't working. She was depressed when she wasn't working. She really, really enjoyed it. So in that situation, for that short period of time, BR, before Robin, they really kind of were working in this "it takes a village" philosophy, because Christine was always very happy to stay home. She never wanted to work. She always wanted to raise the kids and be a homemaker. Janelle always wanted to work, and then Mary was just kind of there doing a little bit of both, fitting in there. But between Christine and Janelle, I felt like they really did embrace that philosophy. But then it all went to pot once Robin got added to the family, and then the catfishing thing, like it just the everything started crumbling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that it's interesting, because I think that Christine and Janelle actually made up a big portion of the family, because they actually had the most kids. And she even talks in the chapter about how the two of them would have to go out shopping together and share a lot of the bills with each other, because they had so much of the responsibility, so much of the lion's share as far as the childcare was concerned. So they had to work it out between the two of them, where even in that dynamic, Mary was kind of off to herself in some instances, taking care of her child, and Cody was off doing Cody. So you really had more of a team, in a weird way. It was kind of like, I guess, in a traditional husband sense, Janelle would have been the husband, the provider, and Christine would have been the homemaker. And then everybody else would have kind of filtered in to that. And I think that everybody contributed to the family. It's just that, in this particular, because we're watching a family show, they were the family. And so it's even ironic from that perspective that Cody complains now, even still, that, oh, you took the family with you. Well, they were the family. Like, they were the kids' family. Like, Christine was the one watching them all the time. She's the one that was building relationships and memories with these kids. So it makes perfect sense to me that if something were to happen, that the kids would want to see Christine do well and have the best life possible. So I'm a little confused as to why Cody is confused.
Yeah. It's a very good question. Yeah. I found that line interesting in there because I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Mary talking about how she used her money separately because they like fresh vegetables and blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, you have one child. They each had 6. And so the money was a little bit of a discrepancy there. Also, they needed to buy in bulk to be able to afford the food for 12 kids.
Right.
And then split it up that way. But I also found it interesting that Janelle said every day that she worked, Christine not only was watching her kids, but she was preparing dinner for them as well, which means she prepared dinner for Janelle as well too. So she definitely was the homemaker in the given situation, and Janelle and everybody ate, and she never mentioned that Mary was a part of it. And Mary said she had her own meal with Leon, but back then, she also said that Leon liked to spend a lot of time. You could go to any house at any time and they would welcome you to have a meal there. And so I think that happened a lot. Because all the siblings are eating together. And then there's Leon. So I think Mary had a lot of times where she was kind of by herself. So I found it interesting, especially with her having just one kid, that she didn't say, you know what, I got Mondays. You all have a lot going on, and you all are doing, you're working full time, you're raising all the kids and homeschooling them and doing all the shopping and all the cooking. I'll do Mondays. Monday will be my night. Everybody comes over and I've got dinner for y'all. It never happened. She never offered that. And so that was a little bit shocking to me.
Well, I guess it's a little hard though, because according to Mary, she was cooking everything fresh. Whereas the other ladies were using more produced foods or the prepared foods. So they probably had heat 'em ups and stuff like that. So in Mary's house, it was fine dining because she could, like you said, she would go out. I'm sure she would go out. If you're buying fresh, you're not going out buying, chickens and chicken breasts and, 40 pounds of chicken breasts. You're buying like one pack of chicken breasts, and that's nowhere near enough food to even feed just Janelle's kids or just Christine's kids.
Right.
So you're preparing, like these guys are basically running a cafeteria. Christine was running a cafeteria. If you want to keep it all the way a stack, like she was taking care of 12 kids, or I guess at the time it would have been 11 kids. But that's a lot of children to feed. And then you have to feed yourself, and you have to feed anybody else who wants to swing by the house. Because apparently Cody was stopping by her house to eat too. So, I'm feeding the whole brood. So, I gotta go get hit the BJ's or the Costco or the Sam's Club or whatever. Big warehouse store. I can't just go to the little supermarket or Whole Foods.
And I find it interesting too that part of her shopping, and she cut coupons. You showed the coupons that she had, and she was doing everything to save as much money as possible. So buying in bulk, doing the stuff, and then they had the food pantry, of course. So when large cans of beans went on sale, they bought 5 of them, or they bought and they stored it into the pantry. And then in the interview that one time, she's like, but then all of a sudden we were out of sugar one day. And Mary goes, I'm sorry, I was the one that took the last of the sugar. And I'm like, of all people, oh, we eat all healthy at our house and that, but I'll go sneaking over in the dead of night into the pantry and steal the sugar and bake cookies when no one's paying attention.
Right. Gotta make the sugar cakes. Somebody had some sugar cookies.
Yes. Yeah. She never really strikes me as the healthiest person. So I don't know if I'm buying the whole we eat organic and all fresh fruits and vegetables. And Cody doesn't know what to eat when he comes over here because we don't have anything like, you don't know.
We don't have anything quick. Yeah.
And I would also say that Christine, of course, learned to, cook for a vast number of people, like, as you said, cafeteria style. Cody never learned how to cook, period. So he didn't have the skill. So once it's just him and Robin didn't figure it out either. And she had Truly's birthday party. There was not enough chicken for everyone to have one chicken breast. Like, I would make sure everyone had two if I was cooking, because it's like, especially if you had any boys that were there, they're definitely going to eat two. So like, let me just figure out two for everyone. I'll make sure I'm only eating one so that there's three in case somebody really wants to have another one. If not, later on in the evening, I'll warm that puppy up and I'll have it later on. But like, especially for a birthday party, that's going to be on camera. I mean, you got to remember, she knew that the crews were going to be there and they did not buy enough chicken, which then goes to the conspiracy theory of maybe she was never planning on it being a birthday party, didn't think about it. They suddenly realized, oh, she's here this weekend and her birthday was this past week, or her birthday's coming up this next week. We really should do something. And she just pulled something out of the refrigerator and said, let's call it a party. And served what she had, and then realized, well, shoot, we don't have enough for everybody who's here. I don't know how many times those older kids would go to I don't know if they ever did, really, but I don't know how often the kids would go to Robin's house to eat. Like they said, they could go to Janelle's or Christine's house. Like, I just don't see her having. Everything's a big deal, she just can't handle life. And to spontaneously be dropped in by like an additional 4 kids, say, that are like, we're going to have dinner here this evening. I mean, it would give me anxiety. It would have to be like, you have to have a new way of thinking, and you have to have your freezer and your refrigerator and your pantry and your life structured so that if all of a sudden there's more kids like this, okay, I only have 6 chicken breasts, so we're going to cut these in half and we're going to add this and we're going to do this. Everyone's going to get a half because we're also going to have rigatoni and we're going to have this, these vegetables and all that. And so we'll cut up the chicken breasts into pieces and mix it up with the pasta and no one will be the wiser. Like, you have to be able to think a couple steps ahead. And I don't think she had that experience really doing that. I just don't think they went out to hang out at Robin's house very often.
Well, here's something that just occurred to me. Like, if you like, because I understand, like, if you all of a sudden you had a spontaneous party, you might not be planning enough food for all the attendees. But it didn't really hit me till just now. You knew they were coming over, though. You know what I mean? You knew they were coming. So if they're coming, you got to feed them. So it's not really a thing where you can say, I didn't know we were having a party, so I only bought 4 pieces of chicken. Like, if you know they're coming, you have to have food for them when they get there. So you could dress anything up as a birthday party, just roll the cake out. You know what I mean? You go to hit the supermarket, get the birthday cake, and anything could be the birthday meal. But you would have to feed them. So it kind of begs the question, and maybe she didn't realize they were coming. Yeah. And she wasn't ready for the visit. And if that's the case, then how in tune are you towards these visits, and how often do these visits actually occur? Because I couldn't imagine, like, my whole thing is like, if anything, with my upbringing, my mom and my dad always had the position that nobody should go hungry when they come to your house. Like, so if your kids are there, you can take as much as you want, just eat all you take. And if anything, I would hazard having, especially if I had people over, I would hazard having leftovers. And something for somebody to say, I'd rather have too much food and we just put it in, the Tupperware, put it in a refrigerator, and then people can come down and hit it, they want to get that, oh, that was good. So you want to come down and hit that microwave or whatever, heat it up or whatever. I would be more along those lines. Like, I'd rather people come over and leave full than people come over and then have to stop off somewhere to get something to eat because we didn't have enough of something. So, like, that would bother me. Like, if anything, I would be mortified if I had people over my house and I'm celebrating a birthday and I'm like entree portions short, on the meal, I would be mortified. I was like, oh my God,
Yes.
I look terrible. This is horrible. You know,
the worst. The worst. I'd want to crawl under a rock.
Right.
Absolute worst. Yeah, I could never. I well over prepare always, because that's always my biggest fear also, that not only is there not enough food, but like I want people to leave full. Like I want them to be satisfied. I want them to like, if they're like, "Ooh, that was really good. Is there more?" I don't want to have to say, "No, that was it. We had one for everybody," you know? So yeah, I'll err on
cut one of them in half. Then you gotta get sharing. If anything, I'm more like, especially when we have like holidays and stuff. I have the little containers, so I'm making enough food where you could take home food. Like, so you come in, you eat, you can take some food home with you, have a good time. If you like it, if you like it, I love it. If I want something, like I like something I really made, I make enough of it to where people can take it home, and I just have little hideout check for myself, cut off for myself. If I'm that pressed about it, but no. But even then, if they go through the food that I have laid out, I just break out my head supply, and I'll just start doling that out. But I would be terrified, and if anything, I would just say I'm not eating.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I would be like, "Oh, I was eating while I was cooking this. I'm really full. You guys go. I'll sit with you and we'll visit." But like, you go. Even if I'm starving, I would not.
Stomach ripping.
Yes, I would not. Yeah, I would like have up in the bedroom like a bag of chips or something that I would run up and like, so my stomach's not growling. Like, okay, I'll be good until after they leave, and then I'll like. But listen, how hard would it have been to call up a pizza place and have them deliver 3 pizzas?
Right.
Done. They didn't even need the chicken. And I mean, I don't know. And I heard Truly is a vegetarian too. I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, what an odd thing to serve for that child's birthday party. The food that she can't eat. I don't know what she ended up eating while she was there. Maybe a bowl of cereal with Saul. I think Saul was eating a bowl of cereal.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, even then, like, because what you just said, like, if you have a vegetarian swing through, pizza, done. Everybody will eat it. A cheese pizza. Then you don't have to think about which toppings on the vegetarian. Don't even cheese. Done. If you want that tomato pie, we can get that for you. But I agree. And that way you just would have been done. She would have at least enjoyed her meal. And usually for the birthday person, they get the meal that they want. So
yes. Is it that way in your house growing up? On your birthday, you got to say what your birthday, it wasn't even necessarily the party, but like, it's your birthday. What do you want for dinner today? It was the one day out of the year that you got to pick what everybody was eating for dinner. It was on your birthday. So that's what blew my mind when I had heard that she was a vegetarian and they prepared chicken for her birthday party. Not even her birthday party. Crazy. Oh goodness.
We got that red meat surprise. Like, on everything, Yes. But what did you think about like the because the next portion where Janelle was talking about in the beginning when she had Logan and how everybody kind of focused on Logan, and I thought that was an interesting like little thing because not to get into it too deep, but she talked about how their approaches to children prior to having their own kids, and then how they approach kids after they had their own kids. And I found like I sniggled at that a little bit, sniggled and giggled, because I think that there's always kind of a dichotomy where you have somebody who doesn't have kids and they tell like the person who has children, like, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And like, you have no idea what's going on here. You're like, you have no idea. There's a power struggle that you just don't see.
They're small, but they're mighty.
Right. And I'm trying not to see too much ground. Like, like I'm old and I'm tired. I'm trying not to lose. But I think that that's always like an interesting thing because when because there's expectations, and I think that that's one of the things that both Mary and Janelle talked about, as far as like the furniture and how you treat the furniture and all that. Because they kind of talked about the furniture too. She talked about a little bit about the approach to them not crawling up on furniture and how she was okay with it. She didn't go after Mary about it, but she just said that I think that they should get to learn and explore their bodies, learn their dynamics, as long as they're being safe. Have at it, do your thing. And I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I don't tear my house up, but I don't want them to feel like it's a museum either. You know?
Yeah. Well, and having that many boys, like my girls would jump on the couch, but they would have like one hand on the back, or like they would never even fall off in that because they were very girly. My son was a little bit more adventurous, but not to the point that he really fell off of things that way. So you kind of got to know your children. I mean, they had a lot of boys, so I could see that the rambunctiousness may have gotten to a level that was a little crazy at given times. But the interesting thing is the reason why Mary's chapter may be so long is that, as we mentioned before, they all wrote their things. They all got to read each other's things, and then they got to finalize their own. So they basically had an opportunity to respond to stories that were being said by other people. And I believe that this very kind of benign story about the fact that the behavior and disciplining that Janelle, and she doesn't call anyone else, she says wives didn't like the jumping on the furniture and that wives, if Mary wouldn't have tried to rebut it, I would have thought that it was more than one wife. Well, and there were only two at the time. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess other wives didn't like it. Maybe Cody was on her side, but then the other wives didn't. But because Mary full on was defending herself, it just made Janelle look even better for being so gracious as not to mention Mary's name and to say it in the plural form. And it made, I think, Mary look worse because she seemed extremely defensive in trying to plead her case in the whole story about the jumping on the furniture and how wrong it was because her furniture lasted longer. And so really she was right in the end.
Right.
Yeah. And you're right. There is a middle ground, as I said, with that many boys. And because Janelle wasn't a strict disciplinarian at all. They probably did take it to a level they shouldn't have. But I don't believe this story kind of starts off, we're talking about Logan. I mean, it wasn't Hunter or Garrison or, like somebody that you would think, or Peyton, or somebody you would picture as, oh yeah, they were a really rambunctious kid. It was Logan. He was probably just a typical boy exploring his world. And as Janelle said, he was the first. So poor Logan couldn't do anything when Mary was around. Like, it was like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And then after she had a child and Christine had a child, and everyone was kind of like, all right, we're going to ease up a little bit. I did also find it interesting that she specifically said that mothers are well within their rights to correct any behavior that they see when they're the ones that are watching the children. But she adds, with a scolding. And then she said, I feel that a transgression that requires anything more than scolding is something for the individual mother and Cody to handle. And I 100% agree with that. And then as I was reading that, it made me then think, was there more that Mary was doing early on, since there was such, I mean, it could just be, I mean, she's a forceful voice and she's a loud voice, and she can come across very aggressive. And I would think my interpretation of it, just picturing my kids and who they responded to when they were younger, and that, because I never had to raise my voice, I just didn't. And so they learned they just learned that there were always consequences. I didn't need to raise my voice. If I said, if you do this, then this is going to be your consequence. But here's your other choice. You can do this. And if they choose to do the thing they weren't supposed to do, I'm like, I'm sorry. It's very easy. We have to do the consequence now. As long as you're consistent and you always follow through, you don't have to go screaming and yelling and being a fool. So I think that it was interesting to me in this situation, and it made me wonder, is it just that Mary was that loud, forceful voice that they weren't used to? Because Janelle is not that. So they interpreted it, although we are talking about McKelty, who's really Christine's daughter.
Right.
Although I don't see Christine really as a yeller either. I mean, she's louder and all that. But I just want to know the story behind what went down that was so significant that it was the absolute end to the relationship between Christine and Mary, who were friends and pals prior to that big argument. That was it. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they never came back from it. And McKelty to this day holds contempt for her and says that she would never be friends with Mary. What? I mean, I almost hope it's a significant thing, because if she's making this mountain out of a molehill, I feel horrible for Mary. I really do. If it's just that she was loud and that she was, had an aggressive voice, which is not the way the other women did it, and so it was scary to them at times, yeah, it's not great. But Christine admits she wasn't speaking up and defending her kids for a long time. And then it all came to a head and she exploded. Did she come to a head and exploded because it got physical? Or she did something in terms of maybe not even physical, but like sit in the closet for 10 minutes until you think about it in the dark and they're scared of the dark, or, like something like that that's beyond just your general verbal reprimanding, and something that should have been handled by an individual parent who would do it in love because it's their child. So they see them through different eyes, and they know them differently. I don't know. I would love to know. I think that's the one thing we're never going to know.
Right. Well, because what's the name? McKelty had hinted that she would come out after the show was over and talk about what happened.
You think she will, though? I don't know if she will. She's full of, she also said she knew when the season premiere was after that. And I'm so glad my video then said, though, I don't know. She's implying, and she put her finger on her nose, and that means right answer. And then somebody later on said, what does put your finger on your nose mean? It means right answer. And she said it so definitively, like, I have information, but I can't really share. Like, I don't know if she just made that whole thing up. So now I don't know if I can trust the things that she says. I think sometimes she is brutally honest, which is great. And you see the non-filter, I'm just going to say it the way it is. And at the same time, she's got this other side of her personality where she will withhold information or kind of talk around things or make up excuses for people that isn't brutally honest. That, unless she's just all mixed up in her own head and she thinks it's honest because she's just naive enough that she was believing Robin and Cody and their them caring about her and them being wronged, and she just bought it hook, line, and sinker. I honestly think she just liked to be in that position. I think she enjoyed being the bridge in the family, because it was sort of a power position for her until it got old. And so now she's sort of...
There's always a point too where you're the bridge, but if nobody wants to cross it, there's no point for the bridge. Right. And if you're a person who likes to be the center of attention, then the fact that nobody wants to cross that bridge anymore or make that effort, and it doesn't really play a role, then you lose interest in that position.
And you lose the love from both sides.
Right.
Because this side knows that you have 1 foot over here, and this side knows you have 1 foot over here. So neither of them are really trusting you. Neither of them are really sharing their intimate thoughts and feelings, because they don't know if you're going to go running to the other side and sharing that information. So by her severing with Robin and Cody, then her siblings can say, okay, now we can be authentic when we're around you.
Right. But I also think that I think that Janelle might have gave some of it away, because she said that she made a specific point of saying that you can't get physical. And I think that part of it may be where Mary and Christine might have fell out, is because if she, this is one of the complications with somebody being allowed to use corporal punishment on somebody else's child, is that if you don't, like, you just don't have, you might not have the breaks that are necessary in order for you to be able to do that type of punishment. It's because it's one of those, like, that's really one of the a tool that should be rarely, if ever, used, because there are so many other options that you have. If you build your, that also depends on how you do your parenting. If you build your parenting out to where you have other options, then the idea that you have to do corporal punishment isn't on the first thing you reach for. But if you have a very limited view, or you have limited exposure to your kids, then corporal punishment may be the only way you can get through to them. So if they don't have a daily, like, and that's where I was saying with Cody, if he's not meeting with them and interacting with them on a daily basis, then the only thing he can do is reach into the closet and grab a belt or whatever the case may be, because he doesn't have a whole lot of tools. There is a point where, like you had said, that you could talk to your kids. I have that with my kids, and this isn't saying one way or another about corporal punishment. It's just that with my kids, first and foremost, you have to know the kids that you're dealing with, hands down. And with my kids, with their sentimentality, where they are as far as their sensitive nature, I know there are things that I can say to them that would affect them more than if I ever put my hand on them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if you say something to the effect of, like, "Oh, you really disappointed me." You know, I'm really disappointed. Like, "Oh, that crushed me. I'd rather you grab me."
And they're crying, and
right. So if you have that type of relationship, then it makes it easier. And I was always like, because one of the things they talked about, I was more of a person that would try to talk to and explain and have a conversation with, as opposed to just trying to, treat them like a fender and bang them back into shape. Like, I was always one to try to sit down and have the conversation, because I need for them to understand what it is they did, why it was wrong, and why they shouldn't do it again. I don't just need you to be afraid of the consequences. I need you to understand why there are consequences to what you're doing. Yeah. And so, like, with that, I can see a world where, and this isn't necessarily shot at Mary, it's just that difference of approaches. And I think that if you maybe have, and this is one of the things too, like, kind of a trick bag, that if she's has some sense of anger or resentment because she hasn't been able to expand her family the way she wanted to, grow her family the way she's always wanted to, there could be some underlying resentment there. So you come down harder on the kids that you don't have and that aren't yours. And that would always be a concern. Like, are you mad at them because they did something wrong? Or are you beating them because they did something wrong? Or you beating them because, you wanted more and you're mad. Right. And so you're trying to bang them out,
Yeah. It could have gone either way. Plus, then she also worked at a place for, she said, at-risk youth. The only place I saw in Lehigh, and she said it was in Lehigh, and the only facility I could find in Lehigh was a residential facility. And residential's not at risk. At risk is, these are the kids that are on the brink, and we want to make sure they graduate. And so we're putting them in a special, smaller school with more attention, just to see to it they have the support they need to get through and get that diploma and be successful in life. That's at risk. Residential facility is a whole nother world. And so the behavior treatments that are going to be instilled in that facility are going to be harsher, because you're going to have kids that absolutely refuse to do what you need to do, or do what they're told to do. So I feel like that might be a little part of her brain where she saw this kind of discipline happening. Right. And then paired with the notion of, well, look at all these kids that they're having, and I only have my one. And so there's that little bit of resentment, but, so she'll kind of push her authority forward a little bit in that given situation. There could have been a lot of factors at play, but it seems pretty clear she overstepped her boundaries in one way or another, whatever the intent or the reason was behind it.
Right. And I think that's a good point too, is just the idea that, sometimes you encounter that with professionals, as they say, like you have the mentality, or at least the idea, that because this is what I see when I'm at work, I see what can happen when kids go down a certain path and they don't have a certain direction. They lack discipline, and they can turn out like this. And the problem with that is you're dealing with the extreme cases and the horror stories of what could happen if certain things aren't in place for a child. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every child who doesn't have this particular type of structure is going to turn out that way. And so even giving Mary a certain level of grace, if I'm correct as far as her involvement with troubled youth, that she may have taken her position as a troubled youth counselor or whatever to the extreme and tried to implement that into her home life to protect her kids from falling down that thing. Yeah. One of the things I would always be very hesitant about is you have to understand the kids that you're dealing with. The kids that you're dealing with, it's like any relationship. If you have issues with a previous lover, that you shouldn't take the ills and the transgressions of that previous person and put it on your next person, because they didn't do anything to you. They weren't cheating on you and treating you bad. That was the last person you were with. And so don't hold me accountable for something that I didn't do. Don't go home and yell at your kids because you were at work and you saw a bad kid today. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not gonna be talking back to me like those kids at work. Like,
right.
Give them a break,
I found it interesting too. Janelle said when it came to disciplining that as long if wait, I have it right here. None of the adults will tolerate blatant disrespect or lying from any of the kids, regardless of their age or the parentage. When either of these happen, I feel completely comfortable stepping in and asserting myself. She writes, I will also intervene when any of our children ignores his or her own mother's instructions. I have no problem acting as a secondary enforcer. So the child knows the mother is to be taken seriously. This is, I found it very interesting because I wonder if this was also a nod to the story of Mary talking about how she was upset. Like, I wonder if she read this and thought, oh, you didn't have my back when I was yelling at the kids. But what Janelle wrote was, I will also intervene when any of the children ignores his or her mother's instructions. Those kids were not ignoring Mary. And Peyton looked like he was going to cry during that. Maybe it was just a hot day. I don't know. His face was all red. And I don't know who was all involved, and the cameras didn't quite catch the whole thing. So there were some boys there, but because Peyton was kind of foreground in the camera, I felt like he was part of the person that was making fun of or teasing Robin's girls. And they shaped up, and Mary was so upset that they didn't double down and have her back in that. I'm like, well, have your back for what? You were handling it. Like, when you didn't need backup, everything was fine. They were listening to you. It was all good. That would have been the wrong thing to do, to have the wives like go, yeah, Peyton. With you, like she was handling it. And then Christine would have talked to Peyton later on in the day. And so I think it went down the way it should have gone down, with the exception of Christine was not happy how it went down because she thought Mary was out of line with reprimanding and disciplining him in front of everybody in that given situation. Now that I don't know. I don't know what their rules are in terms of, as the kids got older, scolding them in front of the other ones. I don't know. I don't know. She thought that Mary was being harsh in that situation. She was angry for sure, but I don't know. Maybe it was justified. I don't know if they were just teasing in terms of words or if they were like physically picking on her. To me, those are kind of two different levels of teasing. So not knowing exactly what happened, I really can't intellectually comment on it. But I found that very interesting when she wrote that, because it made me think of the Mary story. And I'm like, oh, see, now we have two different situations here. Mary really wants her back supported no matter what. You come to my defense when I'm disciplining. And Janelle's very quick to say here, no, only if a parent's disciplining and that child is not being respectful, even if it's their own child, like no matter what, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be the backup in that given situation.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know if that's what she was addressing specifically, because you have to read between the lines in this book. But if that was the story that she was referring to as she was sharing about that, it was the story that came to my mind when I was reading it. I thought that was an interesting way for Janelle to explain why she didn't come running to Mary's defense.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that there's a point where, like, first, with regard to how you support somebody, I think that there is definitely a point, like, especially when you're co-parenting, your initial feeling may be to fly in and support the person who you're co-parenting with. But sometimes the biggest support you can give them is for you to fall back and allow them to stand on their own authority. So in that particular case, if you're in there handling it, what does it look like if I jump in there and say, by the way, let me step on what she's saying, because you guys need to understand that I'm upset. It should be enough that you're upset and you're talking to her. If you are on even keel and you have just as much power as I do, then I don't have to come in there and jump in and start tagging them too, because you got it. There's also a point where I can see where Christine maybe has an issue. And again, I'm kind of where you are. I'm just kind of throwing this out as a possibility. I can see there being an issue, because one of the things I keep hitting on, I guess, in this conversation, it seems like I'm tagging a lot, is that you have to understand your child. And understanding your child, even though your child may do something wrong, yelling at one kid in front of their siblings or friends can have different effects than if you yell at another kid doing the same thing, same circumstances. Some kids are more receptive if you pull them aside and you have that one-on-one conversation with them, because they have, maybe their self-esteem is a little lower. Maybe part of the reason they're doing it is because they're suffering from some type of insecurity. You yelling at them in front of the other kids and making them feel more insecure is only encouraging further bad behavior or future bad behavior. So you have to be able to make those kind of judgment calls in that situation. And that actually is a place where I, as a parent, may step in and say, you know what, from this point forward, I don't need you talking to my kid, because you can't discern which one is which. If you can't tell which way the water is going, then you don't need to do it. Because a big thing, especially when I was a kid, and even as I apply my type of parenting, I guess, I don't know what you call it, but the way I do it is that if you don't have time to discipline your kids properly, then you don't do it. If you don't have time to do it right, don't do it. If you can't sit down and address them the way they need to be addressed, you stop with it. Obviously, if something's going on, you stop what it is, especially if it's dangerous. Obviously, you stop it. But as far as you sitting there yelling, hooping, and hollering, and especially before you even consider putting your hands on somebody, make sure that you have time to explain to them what they did wrong, because that's more important, because you want to correct the behavior, not just punish bad behavior, but you want to correct the behavior moving forward. And just embarrassing them, yelling at them, and having a bunch of parents hoop and holler at them is more bullying than it is parenting. And that's where I would kind of, if that's what happened, then that's where I would kind of see Christine's point.
Yeah, I agree with you, James. I would have lost my cool if I were Christine. Yep.
Yeah, especially if you got a kid that's sensitive. Like if you have a real sensitive kid and somebody's standing there, on top of them, you ain't gonna be putting your hands, because that's your brother and your sister. You gonna do what I tell you to do. And especially if it's a situation where, and here's the other part that just occurred to me, especially if it's a situation where if Robin's kids can say whatever they want to say to Peyton, and then the one time Peyton says something back, you lose your shit. No, we're not doing that. Well, we're not going to do that. Either this is how they play, or they don't play that way, and nobody plays that way. But you're not going to sit there and hoop and holler and chastise my child and then this other kid gets to bully him or whatever. So we're not doing that. So I don't know.
Oh, that's a really good point. We don't have the whole story, do we?
Right.
Yeah, all you do is see that. I mean, I will say Peyton looked like he was on the verge of tears. Like I feel like he got the message.
Yeah.
You know, whether he was really wrong and then realized, whoa, I shouldn't have done that, or whether he was just retaliating, you know, from the way that they were acting. And I mean, I think those girls could have been annoying when they were younger. I mean, especially the youngest one. Like, she didn't. It just seemed like they were a lot, and there was a. I think they were so desperate. They were kind of like their mom in terms of being so desperate to fit into the family that, like, especially when one of the older boys came home, did you notice they like run and hug and jump on, you know, and try to, and they're constantly trying to sit on their laps and go on their bed. There was a lot of them really hanging on the other kids and I could see how like some of these kids would be like, we don't do this. We'll fight, but other than that, we're not that touchy. So just back off a little bit. So,
you know, something just occurred to me that you just said.
Yeah,
like there is a point, and this is just a thing that just occurred to me. Okay. So forgive me, but there is a point where
is it the dark James?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, go ahead.
A little bit, dark James. But there is a point where you, as maybe even as some of the kids, like, look, you know, you're my sister because your mom married my dad, but you're not my sister.
Right.
So for you always to be like the thing that really struck me was when you say sitting on people's laps. Like this is not appropriate for you to be sitting on my lap. This is not appropriate for you to be hanging off my back and hanging off of me and always touching on me because we, even though we're related, because, you know, we all family, but we are not related. So we need to keep that clear, like, you know, respect each other's boundaries. And I, you know, because it was, I don't know. Like, I know everybody tries to pretend like once you blend families, everybody is blended, but, you know.
Yeah. No, there's a huge age gap between those girls and those older boys.
Right.
And at that age, girls just sort of idolize boys at that age, no matter who they are in any given situation. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right that they were enamored with it. They didn't have that before because they didn't have siblings before, no matter how much Robin says that she's from a polygamous family.
Right.
So this was all new to them. And they were probably like, well, this is awkward and uncomfortable because, and I could see Robin and Cody encouraging that. Like, they're your siblings. Of course you can do that. They're just your siblings, you know, not being dumb as they are and not realizing, no, there are boundaries.
Right.
Or even for Cody to step up and say, like, our kids don't act like that much with each other. I mean, some do. I mean, you'll see sometimes, like Savannah, I remember seeing once crawling on Peyton's lap and he was reading her a book and all that. Well, yeah, you know, just sort of the normal, it's nighttime routine or it's story time or we're just sort of filling in times. But theirs was a very aggressive, hanging on them, hugging them, crawling up and always being, you know, they never sat by themselves. They always wanted to sit next to or on top of either Cody or one of the other boys. They didn't do it with the girls. I never saw it. I never saw them like being all excited with the girls and like, oh, I like these big sisters of mine. It was always the boys. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just inappropriate. Even if it was completely innocent, it was still inappropriate.
Right. And that, you know, and that kind of pulls in too that, you know, at some point, some of the older boys, you know, especially if you're kind of raising them where because what they talked about, I'm kind of skipping, but with Robin, she had said that her girls were very sensitive. And so if you have a situation where they cast the girls as being super sensitive and super fragile in a way, and the boys are saying, look, I don't want these girls hugging on me or jumping on me. And sometimes I just need my space. And if they say anything to them, then all of a sudden they're being mean and nasty and aggressive to these sweet, innocent children. And you guys aren't accepting your brothers and sisters. So that in itself can create a scenario where resentment can start to build, because now we're allowing them to get away with things you would never allow me to get away with. And if that's the case, kids have a very strong sense of fair and just and right and wrong. And so they feel that they're being treated unfairly because you're trying to accommodate this child. But when I did the same thing last week, you lost your mind. Now all of a sudden they're doing the same thing I did, and it's the cutest thing you've ever seen. You know, this is ridiculous. And you create those divisions amongst the kids, and that can fracture the family as well. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we just don't know, but you know, you can I kind of suspect maybe going on.
Yeah. And that could be what Janelle was talking of in last season when she was referring to the fact that we did not take the necessary steps to properly blend the families together. We threw them together and we told our kids, deal with it. These are your siblings now. And so I don't think rules were put. I mean, why would they be put in place? How many rules were in this family? Very few.
Right.
I'm sure, like, you just can't disrespect or be rude, really. Like, other than that, it was kind of like, have at it, and you can jump on furniture too, just not Mary's. It was sort of like, it is what it is. You can eat wherever you want. It was an open door policy at any point. You could walk into anyone's house. Like, it was pretty laid back in that situation. So I could see them just saying, it is what it is. And it's just not working out because those girls were raised so differently that the blending just didn't happen. And they had a different idea of what blending was going to look like than the OG-13, who didn't even want these kids to come. That's the problem. They didn't want these kids there. And these kids were like, woo, you know, add water and stir. We have a family now. It's fantastic. And they just thought that they were going to blend right in. And Robin thought so too. She was just as dumb. I mean, where did the kids get it from? Robin, you know, like, well, they're your siblings now. Of course you can go up and give them hugs and kisses. They're your brothers and sisters. You know, and they were kind of like, yeah. So that could be, this kind of particular situation could be even, at least in part, what Janelle was referring to in terms of her taking ownership along with the rest of the adults in not properly preparing the OG-13 for these three kids to come in and be a part of their family.
Right. And I would even say that, I guess, even put a spike on it, is just the idea or notion that I've always been a big proponent of giving kids the autonomy over their own bodies. So, you know, by holding out that, you know, the older boys have to let these young ladies swing on them, hang on them, sit on their laps, crawl up their backs, whatever the case may be, and telling them that that's something they have to accept because this is now your brother and sister. I think that that's completely inappropriate because you're not teaching them boundaries. And more importantly, you're not, by default, in a weird way, you're also not teaching the girls, the young ladies, boundaries, because if they're being told that they get to do whatever they want to this person because it makes them feel good and it's something that they want, then how then do you teach them later that they have autonomy over themselves? And just because it'll make this boy feel good to touch them in a certain kind of way, if they don't want it to happen, they have every right to say that it can't happen or shouldn't happen to this guy or girl, whatever. But you understand what I mean? Like, you want to be able to give them that autonomy that they can control. That's the one thing that you should be able to control: who touches you and who doesn't. Like, bottom line, you know, if you don't want somebody crawling on your lap, then you should have every right. Look, I'm not in the mood for it. Get off my lap, you know, and let that be that. But if you're gonna get yelled at because you're not being a good brother, like, they're not being a good sister. How about that?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Oh, what else did she say in here?
Let's talk about how they work together. And they bought bulk. How the kids were free to move from house to house. Well, they did say, like, she did describe that there were a few evenings that our house was completely empty, I guess, because they were over at Christine's.
They must have been. Yeah, I was surprised. when I like
You
heard
get a
that.
little
I'm like,
break.
oh, I thought they were always over at your house because of the pool, but like when it was probably in the middle of summer, they probably did the pool like kind of
Right.
because it was Vegas. They were probably like mostly spring and fall when it was 110 degrees. Like, yeah, we'll just stay in the air conditioning. We're fine.
Yeah, Vegas is crazy.
I had written here she had said that she's a complete softie and that her kids tease her that she never enforces anything, that she just gives idle threats and doesn't follow through, which I was just like, Janelle, because it's so opposite of the way I raised my kids.
Right.
My kids didn't even know what idle threats. I mean, I literally, when they started into competitive dance and cheer when they were younger, they would come home crying all the time. And they're like, we're not going to go to the next competition if we don't get together by the next practice. And it's not good enough. You're going to the I already paid the $120 entrance fee, and I already paid for the $300 shoes, and I already paid for I'm like, we got the hotel. You're going to no, Mom, that's what she said. I go, that's it. So I literally had to set my kids down when they were like 5 and 7 and explain what idle threats were. And I'm like, this is called an idle I mean, we just had like a lesson. And I'm like, this is what your coach is doing. We don't do it in our house. What Mama says, Mama means.
Right.
But that doesn't go for everybody in the world. And your coach is that's her way of trying to get people to work harder. She doesn't understand that to you, this is like life and death. This is all this work is coming to a complete end, and we're not going to compete if we don't get it together. It's just not true. She just thinks that's going to make people work harder. And, like you don't need that, but some kids probably do, because if they're raised in households where they, don't have, what I say goes as part of the enforcement and the rules, then they maybe need more push. And they're not calling individuals out. They're calling all of you as a group because you're a team and you're working together, but you're going to have to learn that when you're being talked to as a team, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I really had to explain it all through all the tiers. And, we still had more practices where they came back and said, no, she said we're not going to go. Do you remember when we had the talk about idle threats? So anyway, so I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, Janelle, I just can't relate. So she says their kids all call her softie and that she will threaten them but not follow through with anything. And she says, I feel more comfortable discussing with them what is wrong with their behavior than punishing them for it, which, okay, I get that. And then, but I written in the margin, not good, Janelle. But then she goes on and says, I have always been a non-confrontational person, so this is just my parenting style. I think that's why I wrote not good. And then she goes on to say, if not for my sister wives and my husband, my children would have probably just run wild. So I thought that was so great of her to throw that line in there and say, listen, I am not a disciplinarian. I am not. Right. I'm a worker. I enjoy working. I like making the money. I'll bring home the bacon. Christine can fry it up in a pan. And the kids will be okay because there are rules and discipline that, there's structure that happens when I'm not around. Because when I'm here, I just want to love on them and have conversations with them about things. And I don't want to do it. So I just thought that it was great for her to say, listen, if they were mine 24/7, they would have run amok and it would not have been good. But I can lean into my comfortability in terms of not having to follow through, not, just sitting down and have conversations with them, because I know I've got my sister wives and my husband who are raising them in this way in my absence when I'm gone. And she said she was working like 60, 70 hours a week. So she really wasn't around very much. So she's like, okay, so when I'm there, I'm going to be a little bit more of the softie, which it doesn't bother me actually. And I had to like, after I read that last sentence, because I wrote, okay, with an exclamation mark, like, okay, good. And like, all of a sudden I was good with it. And I'm like, why am I all right with Janelle taking that stance when I would not be all right? I'm not all right with Cody not disciplining anybody. And I just think it comes down to personality and her being the mom. because the moms are the nurturers, and moms are the ones that have like are oozing with love, and they're the ones that are really there. I remember my kids were playing with him so much all the time. At one time when we were outside of church at the playground, and somebody was saying, oh, your kids just love hanging out with you and playing with you and that. And he's like, yeah, he goes, it's great. He goes, except for like, if they get hurt, if they're really sad or something, they'll go to mom. Like they know where the real love and nurturing is going to come from. Like, hey, I'm the fun guy, but like what I would love is if they were really sad and we were both there, they would come running to me, but they're going to go to mom. And I feel like she just wanted to be the one that they would go to and talk to, and that she would be that tender heart for them because her time was limited with them. Whereas, Cody, he's a man, he's a patriarch, right? So he needed to step up and be the man and reinforce and support his wives in what they were doing. That's what I'm taking. Maybe I'm a hypocrite. But as I was analyzing myself, that's what I kind of thought my mom, but she's their mom. Right. And she's Janelle, and she doesn't raise her voice, and she doesn't, she's just sort of this way. I mean, she can not have raise her voice and still reinforce the rules, but I don't know. I gave her a pass, and maybe it's my bad for doing so. I will admit it if so.
Well, I think that she has, because her approach to parenting is a lot like her approach is to how they describe the relationship between her and Cody. Because both her and Cody said that their big thing was, he's my best friend, and we would have these deep introspective conversations, and we would philosophize about the exoteric nature of the world and the universe. And that's what the way she kind of crafted herself. And there's a bit of I think opportunity for her to be that type of parent, because Christine stepped in and was that type of parent for her. So it gave her the freedom to be able to be the type of laid back parent who didn't have to do the disciplinary and day-to-day struggles with the children, because she had somebody in place who was doing that, and that was Christine. And that was part of the trade-off. Like, I go to work, I bring you my money, you take care of my kids, and we're all good. We're all getting something that we want out of the situation. Christine, it didn't bother her. And I think that that's part of why it might seem a little more permissible for Janelle to do it, because there was, in fact, an agreement between Christine and Janelle for Janelle to be able to play one role and for Christine to play the other role. The issue that I think so many people, or at least I have with Cody in this particular sense, and where I draw the distinction, is that Cody tries to paint himself as the all-around great dad who's always around doing for his kids, but then you find out that that's not the case. This talks again about we talked earlier about the sense of integrity. If I catch you in a lie in one place, then I start to second guess and question everything that I hear from you moving forward. So I think that that's part of it. And then as far as like her approach, where she would be and where her kids would be, I think that people are powerful in and of themselves. And I think that they underestimate their power. And I think that if Janelle was in a situation where she didn't have access to Christine or someone like Christine, she would have figured it out. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it gave her the freedom to be able to do it because she had Christine. So she could be the hands-off parent. But if Christine wasn't there, I think that Janelle would have figured it out. Because there's certain things that I don't think she would have been able to tolerate from her kids or her kids doing, absent, Christine to come back and do the day-to-day punishment stuff.
Yeah.
And, something just occurred to me too. Just as a general rule, because I have friends who do co-parenting, and just as a general rule that I've observed is that the unfairness, there is a sense of unfairness if you are the non-custodial parent and you punish a child that you're not going to see. Like, you say, you can't watch TV, and you're going to sit and do your homework, and you're going to just no TV, no nothing, no games, no phone, and you're just going to sit in the living room and do whatever. And then you go off for the week, and you leave it to the custodial parent to enforce your rules or your punishment.
Right.
And that Janelle very well may have been in that similar situation where if she's going off to work, how can she say to her kids, you're going to do A, B, and C, and Christine, you have to make sure they're doing A, B, and C while I go off and leave because I'm not going to be here to do it. So that could be another reason as to why Janelle was kind of like, I have to leave the punishment to somebody else because I'm not going to be here to enforce it.
Right. Right. And if something happened right before the little bit of time she was home and she found out that it went down, she's going to want to sit down and just talk with her kids about it, in that she's not going to want to delve out punishment at that time. Like, I have so few waking hours with these children because I work so much. I don't want it to be confrontational. I don't want it to be argumentative. I don't want it to have a negative tone to it. Like, let's make the most of it. So I could see her saying, okay, here are the things that happened yesterday or this past week and that the mom said that I need to deal with. So let's sit down and let's talk it through, and it's easier to do that at that point. One, you weren't even present. So you're not emotionally involved in it. You're just hearing about it secondhand. Right. So it is easier to just sit down and say, oh, all right, you tell me your side of the story. I heard Mary's side or Christine's side or Robin's side or whoever. What is your side, or Dad's side? What is your side? Okay, well, this is what I see on this side. This is what I see on this side. This is where you're wrong. Do you understand? Have you learned from this? All right, let's have popcorn and watch some Marvel.
Right. Yeah. And there's a weird point too, where if you're and this is kind of the if you're trying to beat a hard case, like if Mary's trying to beat a hard case, and every time you come home, she has a whole list of stuff that they did wrong and everything that they could have did better, then what happens is you wind up getting dismissed because every time I see you, you tell me all these things these kids did wrong. You're just kind of a nitpick. Like you just picking things out about them and nothing is really important. Nothing is dire. Right. So you kind of get dismissed. So, I mean, I can see that scenario too, where it's like, okay.
Yeah. I could see. Yeah. The whole list of, and they came in from outside and they had their shoes in the shoe bin and they didn't put them in the closet. And they know that when they're wet, they should go in this closet on this towel and not in the shoe bin where they're going to get other things wet. And she's like, what?
Right. What?
That's number 42.
Right. And she's there for an hour and a half talking to you. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, all right, okay. The whole time you walking out the room. All right. Okay.
I could just see her reading it and then sitting the kids down and going, okay, are we just going to be better next week?
Right.
I'm not even about to read this. It was a rough week, clearly. So let's just pretend like it didn't happen and y'all be better and we'll move on.
Take too much too serious. But there was a point where she was talking about, I'm so glad my sister wives as well as Cody are there with me as we navigate the murky waters of adolescence, especially issues of love and sexuality. For me, the most important lesson to teach my kids is not to get too serious too fast. The adults constantly back me up and emphasize to our children that serious dating is not at all appropriate in high school. If our kids are to date, we prefer them to go out on group dates. With Madison, Logan, and Hunter, I'm very blunt in discussing the perils of too much intimacy before they are mature enough to handle it. I never tire of telling them the unexpected babies and STDs could mess up their lives if they're not careful. That was for me. I think that's kind of the conversation that parents have with their children. I think that it's just from my perspective, I always felt like it's too many parents approach this type of subject matter way too late. They wait till their kids, they feel comfortable in talking to their kids about it, not realizing their kids are already talking about it at school with their friends, with people that you don't want talking to your kids and explaining sex and sexuality to your children. They're talking to those folks. But I also think that there's a part where trying to scare them about their sex and sexuality, it can fall into a negative as well. Like everything being like, you're going to catch an STD, you're going to catch a dirty disease, and you're going to get pregnant and your life is destroyed. You know, I think that that's kind of a bad starting point. Like, what are your thoughts on it? Because I know we had the whole thing where Cody did the, sex talk with the kids, and then Robin, of course, she had her infamous, this is my heart, and then he threw it on the ground after he took it from me. Yeah,
More lies.
Yeah. Accusations were made. Like, I didn't like that at all. Like,
oh no!
Some heavy accusations.
I want to say that's probably the most uncomfortable I ever was. I think I was more uncomfortable with that speech than I was with Cody talking to McKelty and the boyfriend at the time, which made me squirm too. Like, I was just like, what is he saying? What's happening? I am so uncomfortable for this poor kid. Did he know that he was getting into this? Are his parents aware? He's on national television right now being told this craziness and kind of being berated. And, Cody's like, well, what do you think you're going to do? And he's like, it was just, it was kind of a hysterical scene. But her talk made me so uncomfortable. And I'm like, why is she saying all this to the kids? Right. Well, because according to Janelle, she was very serious about it. So she kept bringing it up to him. All right. So she's using the scare tactic, basically. This is you will ruin your life. So just don't do it. Like, there's no matter what, for 15 seconds of pleasure, it's not worth the rest of your life being ruined. Don't do it. Wait until you get married. Okay, so that's the way she takes. But what I found interesting is that they're so passionate about it. They all talk about it in their chapters and that. And here's Robin, who is an example of didn't do it. So it's like, so I want to know, like, what is the kid's interpretation then of Robin and her kids? Did it ruin her whole life? Or is she a bad example of, well, she seems to be doing really well right now.
Right.
She seems to be living the life of Riley, like, I'm going to have 3 kids too, and make sure the first one is before I get married. Right. And then get divorced and then find somebody else. Like, I'm curious to see what their perspective is on this. And I feel like Robin doesn't have a leg to stand on to speak up in these meetings and talk about her experience. It's like, zip it, shut up. We all know that it was going to end up bad for you. Like, we all know that the church was going to look down on you and your family was going to be disappointed in you. That's obvious, Robin. Just shut, like, she thinks she's giving pearls of wisdom of like, and then I'm thinking of the group when they were all sitting on the floor and the couches too, not the speech that was church on a Sunday morning, where that was her sermon that she was given. But when they was more casual, when they were sitting and Cody's like, all right, let's sit down and like have the talk. And for her to be sharing anything, I was just like, you've got nothing to say in this situation. You were promiscuous before you got married. That's against your religion. You're trying to teach the kids to do different, and for you to just keep bringing it up and saying, I didn't listen, but you know what, that was a mistake. No, especially when she didn't have the respect of any of these kids.
Right.
So for her to give her 2 cents on anything, they're really not listening to it, but especially on something that's such a sensitive topic as this is, I think that she was completely out of line there. And then, just that whole purity speech and throwing it away and it being abused and stolen from her, which is when she implies that she was raped in that situation. That's the run I got from it right away, that it was stolen and taken from her. Like, she was not an agreeable party in this whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a crime. So are you now saying that a crime happened, or are we just trying to make something up to make ourselves sound better and to justify your actions for not having the same standards that you're expecting of your sister wives' kids? STDs. Oh, I don't know. Right before that paragraph, though, I did like how Janelle pointed out that the kids will go through different stages and transitions in their life where they'll become closer to one mom or another. And I like how she pointed out that at that particular time, and when they wrote this book, they were in Vegas, but they were still in the rentals. And she said, currently, Hunter gravitates towards Christine. She has her own way of talking to him and can be more helpful to him during this phase than I can. And for this, I am unbelievably grateful. And I thought that was really nice for her to add too, because if you go back and watch that boy, Hunter really looked depressed. He really looked like he was struggling and depressed. And and Janelle seemed like she didn't know what to do. Like she kept trying, they're trying to get him in sports, they're trying to get him involved in activities, they were trying to, and she just, she was at her wit's end. And she would get all teary-eyed every time she talked about it because she was so concerned about Hunter at this given time. So for her to make a point to say during that, because we never saw that, but for her to acknowledge that during that time when Hunter was having such a difficult time, he had Christine. And Christine was a sounding board that he could share with. And it seems like she played a significant role in getting him through what he was dealing with and to the other side. So that was really nice. That was really nice to I don't know if Mariah at the time gravitated to anyone, because like in Mary's chapter, she just pointed out who gravitated to her. Right. But I really appreciated Janelle specifically saying someone that Hunter gravitated to somebody else. She would appreciate it, because McKelty has said on her Patreon that she gravitated to Janelle, that she spent a lot of time at Janelle's house because Janelle was a calming force, and that she was also she would sit down with anyone and have conversations, and they were just different from everyone else's conversations, that they were deeper and they like really worked through issues and problems, and that she really appreciated that. And she appreciated her home. She said that her home was more, I guess, depending on the given time and who was there and who was where at any given time. But generally speaking, she found Janelle's house to have more of a calming presence to it. So the boys must have all been busy. But I do believe that this was kind of during those teenage years. And she said that she spent a lot of time over there. So I found that interesting because Janelle doesn't like say, and people came to me too.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that there was there might have been a sense of betrayal on a sense of Hunter's part, because Janelle should have been looking out for him, and he didn't want to move from Lehigh to Vegas, and he might have felt betrayed because she had she was part of them moving. Because realistically, if Janelle didn't want to move, they wouldn't have been able to move. Janelle financed them going to Vegas. Yeah. So, he may have taken that as she's doing this to me and she's ruining me. And so in that sense, because Christine has had history with him, she would have been able to calm him down from that perspective and kind of talk him down off the ledge, because he did have a rough way to go when they got to Vegas from Utah, because he had dropped out of everything. He wasn't interested in sports or starting up because he felt like he had some things taken from him. But Rochelle J, she had pointed out that Sabin implied that she was raped in that speech that she gave in front of during her, I guess I'm Catholic, so they call it homily, during her sermon, where she was giving her testifying. She was testifying.
There you go.
About tossing away her and just having it taken away from her. And Rochelle points out something that I'd always said, could you imagine if you, especially Dayton, because Dayton would have been the one that, a result of that theft, we'll call it a theft. He would have been a direct result of that theft. He's a living, breathing testament that this is the relationship that you had. And you're saying that not only was I a mistake, because that's what you're standing there saying, that he is a mistake, but you're also saying he's the product of a crime, which is something completely different. So, I mean, I don't think that in an attempt to make herself more of a victim. In that sense, that's why I say she always kind of found a way that she's a victim. And making herself a bigger victim in that sense, you're actually victimizing your kids. Because there is a way, like, I get and I understand. Like when I was a kid, I've said it to my kids, my daughter. You have to understand as you engage in things, mama's baby, papa's maybe. There's no guarantees. It's whether it affects the father or not is up in the air, but is whatever happens, it's most certainly going to affect you. And that's just one of the things, like the tiers of responsibility. Everybody plays the game that we're both the same. We're not the same. We're not the same because my dealing with things will be complete on a different level than how you have to deal with it. So it's just understanding that going into it. It's just built into the system.
Yeah.
But with that being said, like I don't tell her that, like, first and foremost, I tell her that you have a right to control what happens to your body. I don't have a right to tell you what you do with your body. And these boys out here damn sure don't have a right to tell you what to do with your body and encourage you to do something that you don't want to do. But with that being said, if you make a choice and you make a decision, understand that especially in the sense that you get pregnant, I want to do this review on a series called Unexpected, where they talk about teen pregnancy. But if that does happen, it's not the end of your life. Your life will be different. And it's most certainly going to be a lot more challenging. Without question, it's going to be way more challenging. But as a parent, one of the things that I want for my kids, and want for all kids, in fact, is for them to have options, for them to have choices, and for them to have the freedom of being able to take advantage of the opportunities that may come their way. And without having to face the challenges of having to overcome that obstacle of having a child that you're not prepared for. And so I kind of lean that way. That's why I'm not a real big fan of, like, if you do this, you're going to have a baby. Because what happens, and here's the secret to the sauce, what happens when they find out that that's not the case?
Right.
Like, what happens when they find out that it's not true? Every time you have it doesn't mean that you're going to get pregnant. Now you've shot to shit your credibility because something you said isn't accurate. So you're just as inaccurate as the little boys who's telling them that you ain't going to get pregnant on your first day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And on top of Dayton, Lynn pointed out that she went on to have 2 more kids. So really, if she's claiming that this crime was committed against her, then she stayed and had 2 additional children in that situation. And now, mind you, I understand there's human trafficking I just heard today about a situation where a lady was human trafficked for 10 years. She was married to her trafficker. Like, there are complicated situations out there in the world. But there's enough stories from his side of the family and people that knew him that that's not the situation here.
Right.
And she actively and probably aggressively went after him. He was dating her sister and she wanted him for herself. Right. So she made it happen. And to prove that she wanted to be there and that this wasn't a horrible crime, they got married. And then she had 2 more children. And if she's claiming that he's so bad that he did a horrible crime against her, then that taints the father of the other 2 children as well. So although Dayton is the direct result of it and would feel like, like, I wasn't wanted, I'm not, like, I was a mistake, I'm a sin, I'm the product of sin. I'm like, like the amount that would just mess with a child's brain. But then the other 2 girls would have to think the exact same thing. I am the product of a monster, This is what my father did. So the whole narrative that she was spinning, she put no thought into, except for trying to make herself look the victim. And she succeeded in making herself look the victim, but at the same time, she made herself look a fool.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I think that her attempt was there, but for the most part, I don't think anybody really bought it. So
Yeah,
she
there were a lot
looked
of
crazy.
blank stares, right?
Yeah, like I don't like because a lot of the audience members are like, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
What do you mean? Like, this is ridiculous. And it's just creepy as hell that you would have this conversation, especially this is a conversation that, if anything, you might have this. I wouldn't suggest it, but I mean, I think that this would be an appropriate conversation more for your teens or adolescents, like your preteen kids. Like for the babies to sit there and listen to this, no, that's not appropriate. And it's not so much like the fantasy of it. I get that you may have regrets. Like maybe if I would have preferred to have saved myself to marry Cody, the guy that I'm in love with, and the guy I want to have children with, and I'm building a family with him. I get that. I get it. But where I would draw the line, and I would just say that you have to take a step back and just look at your situation. Had it not been for your time with David Preston Jessup, her previous husband, had it not been for that time, you wouldn't have the life and lifestyle that you enjoy today.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you have to go through it in order to get to it. Like you have to go through those hard times in order for you to get to the times that you want and even appreciate. Because how many people have been in situations where, you don't date somebody because they're not fun or they're not as cool as, this other one. And you date the wild, crazy one only to realize that, hey, you know what? Dating wild, crazy people is not fun.
Yeah.
I need somebody who has some sense in their head. And you start to shape and decide that I need to make different choices with my love life. It's part of the learning process.
Yeah.
So,
and wouldn't have that been an awesome opportunity for Robin to say, I made a mistake. I did make a mistake. I compromised my values. It's my fault. I take responsibility for it. And God blessed it in terms of giving me an amazing child, and then we worked with it, and not due to that circumstance and not due to the children, but because of other reasons, our marriage eventually fell apart. But I got 3 blessings out of it. And, the marriage was good for a while or, whatever, like just to say that was her opportunity to come clean in this situation and to just be honest with everyone. And instead for her to like spin this web, it just really made her look bad. It really did.
Right. There's Erica MF. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Said they love to rewrite history. Unfortunately, they have it all recorded.
Yes, it's true.
Right. It's so true.
It's true.
Thank you so much. And that's actually a good point that like we truly live in a different world now. Because I've said it before, like when I was a young man back in my day, you could go out and you could lose your mind. Like you go out somewhere, you can go crazy, you can be standing on top of tables, you could be, streaking or whatever the case may be. And the only way people will find out about it is if you told them or somebody who was there told them. Now everybody's walking around with the phone in their pocket, with the internet in their pocket. And if you make one mistake, it's all over the internet for the rest of the world to review. And unfortunately for this particular family, they invited that into their homes with guys standing around with cameras. And as they try to manipulate the audience, because I think that's what a lot of this was, like the whole like purity speech, that was her attempt to try to manipulate the audience into liking her again. Like that was her way of trying to reach out to the audience and say, look at my bad situation. You should feel sorry for me and be on my side.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work well because people aren't fools.
Yeah, it landed flat. It landed flat.
Right.
You could read right through it, and you could see what she was trying to do to make herself, almost like, I'm going to reclaim my purity.
Right. Taking it back.
That's right. We're starting over.
Right. And if you were in the world, and there's and that's the thing too, is that everybody has value. And I think that there is a lesson to be learned. Like she could have been a valuable resources for the kids in that particular situation. Look, guys, this is what I did. When I was a young person, I thought I knew everything. I thought that I had it all figured out. I thought that the person that I was spending so much time with was going to be the end all be all person for me. Only to realize after I spent a significant amount of time with him, after 3 kids, that this person wasn't the person whom I should be spending my time with.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to encourage you guys to do is to take your time so that you can eventually find the person that you want to be with, and find the person that you should be with, and find the person that you want to share those moments with, like having children. And there would have been value in that. There's no value in you telling them that you are this innocent person who's just walking around. Because if I believe your story, the lesson you're teaching them is that there's nothing they can do. Because you told them that you were walking around, innocent as a dove in the snow. Then along comes this evil, nasty man who took your purity and saddled you with kids and forced you into a marriage and relationship you didn't want to be in. So what hope do these kids have now? You know what I mean? And I think that like what you said about like responsibility, that plays a part of it. Like taking responsibility and ownership over what you did and how you would make that maybe a different choice for that situation.
Yeah. She probably didn't do it because she couldn't authentically do it. She would have to say, like, first she'd have to admit that she went after him and that this was all part of her plan. I don't know if she intentionally got pregnant at all. I have no idea about that. It's a possibility that could have been part of the plan too, that she couldn't share, but we'll just say no. Okay. And we'll just say that, that she ended up getting pregnant and then going ahead and following through and getting married and having additional children. But the reality is that he ended up divorcing her. So her whole claim that he was this rotten, horrible man who didn't treat her right and who she eventually had to get out of the bad situation. She didn't get out of the bad situation. He said, I've had enough. I have told you we cannot afford the kind of spending you're doing. I do not have, my construction company is not that successful yet. We have to live meagerly at this point. We have to save. She wouldn't. When they were in debt, his family gave the money to pay it off. She took it and bought more stuff and didn't pay off the debts. And that's when, justified. That's when he said, okay, we're done here. We're done. And for her to now turn and try to spin it and make him seem like this evil man is sad, really. So she's stuck sort of between a rock and a hard place here. Either she has to completely fess up, which she would never do because she's going to look bad. The truth is not good. It's not on her. It makes it look horrible. Or she's going to do what I recommend, which is talk about your ownership in all of it. She could never do that either because she hasn't taken ownership in anything in the 14 years that we've seen her. So that's off the table. And so she results to what she knows best, and that is to just create a lie and tell a story that's not true.
Right. And I think that's part of it too, is that had she, like, here's the ironic part, at least from my perspective. Had she come out and said, look, this is the situation, and she would have laid it out, yeah, it would have looked bad. And yeah, there would be fault. Yeah, you would look horrible to some degree. But at the same time, I think you would have been able to bridge the gap because people would have respected the fact, at least, that you're being honest about your situation and you're taking responsibility for some of the things that you were part of and the things that you did wrong. And that shows also that you have the capacity to change and to improve. If you never take responsibility for anything that you do wrong, there's no way you're going to improve on anything that you do because you didn't think you did anything wrong. So why would I change? I did nothing wrong. So there's that part of it too. And I think that that's where a lot of the distrust, and again, that speaks about the distrust and the dishonesty, because if you could lie, if you lie about small things, you'll lie about big things.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I always say to my kids too. If you lie about small things, you're damn sure lie about big things. If you lied about a dress, then when you told that story about how this man took advantage of you and violated you, and I figure out, and I suspect that you are dishonest about that, then I don't trust anything you have to say. And you go from being somebody who's dishonest to somebody who is dislikable and reprehensible because you lie about something that's so, like, because there are real people who have undergone this, who went through this situation, and for you to lie about it for advantage is a slap in the face of anybody who this has happened to. And so I don't think you win anybody over for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you dig yourself in a hole. Like she's one of them people that digs herself into a hole, and instead of trying to crawl out the hole or even damn stop digging, she just keeps digging. I'm gonna get out of it.
I will reach China.
Right. I'll come out on the other side. Erica MF, $5 super chat said, I don't think the show would have been this successful without her hot mess, LOL. And I think you're right, Erica.
It's true. It really is true. Right. Sad but true. We wouldn't be here right now having this discussion. I wouldn't have this channel that I started last November. It would be, I would just be another viewer. It would probably be canceled. They almost canceled it early on anyway. But the combination of both Cody and Robin being such hot messes, which Erica MF makes me laugh every time I see it pop up on the screen.
Because unfortunately, it would have went the way of the My Five Wives with Brady. Like they just would have kind of petered out.
Yeah.
They're too understanding.
Yeah. They could have made a mint if they had a YouTube channel for a little bit afterwards, and then they kind of stopped doing it. I would have continued to watch it if they would have just done their own self-filming and would have shared where the family is and what they're doing now, because there comes for me a breath of fresh air in watching people who are successes. There's so much dysfunction in these shows, and these people are so warped, and it's such a mess that we're discussing that I really enjoyed My Five Wives. It was just kind of like, oh, this is nice. I mean, they had issues, obviously, but they very different. And he was so different from Cody, which made the whole thing very different. And the wives were so supportive of each other, and really seemed to enjoy spending time together. And I know that they had scenes on there where they we need to spend more time. We need to do special dates where we draw each other's names. And, oh, that's the one I'm not really getting along with. And, and they kind of ramped it up to show that they were trying to create some sort of drama and whatnot that was in there. But in the end, when Rhonda got sick, or she didn't get sick, but she thought she had cancer, and she was going through that scare of it all. The wives just got together and said, let's do something special. I can't even remember what they did. They cooked dinner or brought a basket over, but it was that sort of, wow, she's really going through it right now and she's really stressed out. Let's do something to help her and support her, to take something off of her mind. You would never see that with the Brown family. The wives did not get together when one was dealing with any kind of trial or tribulation and say, well, Christine's spending day and night in the hospital with Truly, so let's make sure that we do this and we do that, and the kids are over here, and we're, we'll make a whole list of who's visiting her when and where the kids are going, so she has nothing to worry about. And you never saw any of that with them. They were continuing to live their lives and texting each other updates.
Yeah.
Different family.
I think that he was I think that his approach to it was a big part of it, because I actually felt like he cared about all of them, which was a little different. I think that was a little different. I will say that I think a lot of the issues that I find consistently through a lot of the polygamous relationships, I think his family also suffered through a lot of those as well. I don't think it was as I don't think they were, they still had jealousy and things. Their problems just weren't as big as the Brown family problem, because they were like four strangers trying to work it out, four strangers who shared the same dude and trying to work it out. And even with the approaches, like you said, with Robin, especially being such a kind of the fulcrum of the whole family. She fulcrum. She turned it into a situation where she expected the wives to be Cody's friend, and she was okay with the wives being Cody's friend. Because even with Janelle, they have like a special relationship and they have a great friendship, but she didn't want Janelle to necessarily be her sister wife. Excuse me. As much as thank you. As much as she wanted Janelle to be Cody's friend. Yeah. And then Christine could be Cody's friend. And Mary could be Cody's friend who's just kind of around. But none of them would have experienced a true wife relationship. Whereas with Brady, I think that he had a relationship with each one of his wives, which made it a little different for her.
Yeah. He put the work in with each of them. He was very attentive to them. And there was it was very different because there was a lot of conversations that he had with him. We didn't even see many conversations he had with his wives other than logistics. But there was a lot of, how is your day going? What can I do to support you? Like those kind of questions. Right. You're like, what? I'm like, you got 4. Well, he had 5 wives. That's a lot to say. What can I do to support you? No, don't ask that because you might not have the time to do whatever it is she needs. But he did. You could tell he cared for all of them on some level, and I'm sure that deep down inside, he kind of had a favorite, and he had ones that are easier to spend time with than others. That's just human nature. I mean, you can't get 5 friends together and not say like, well, this one is really my bestie because, no matter what, we have each other's back. We speak each other's language. We get each other's humor. We don't get insulted by each other. We, we would be there. We're the ride and dies, but the rest of them in the friend group are great too. And, like the one, if she's not there, I don't care, but it's okay if she's there too, That's exactly how I think it is with the wives. Like, I like them all, but the difference is no matter what his intimate, deep feelings were for each of the individual wives, he looked like he was treating them all the same. He tried to be attentive and ask them questions and find out about like, really, how was your day? Not superficially, but and he'll ask poignant questions about, well, how was so-and-so's test? And how were your test results? And there was just, Cody was all about Cody. And it was really like, what are you going to do for me now? Because now you get me on the every 4th day. So what have you made for me lately? What's for dinner, basically.
Well, what are you going to do to entertain me? I must be entertained. So, but I mean, I think like I can see with Brady, his approach was significantly different than Cody's, and it would have been interesting to see it because even after the show ended, I think one of the tells is that even after the show ended, I haven't heard anything or any reports come out saying that Brady had started purging wives because the show ended. Whereas if the sister wives, I think what kept the sister wives, the Brown family together as long as it stayed together was partly because the show they were still filming the show.
Yeah, I think Mary and Christine would have been gone well before last year or 2 years, whenever it actually happened. I don't think they would have gone to Flagstaff, the 2 of them. I think that they went because the show was still going on. And so they thought, all right, well, we'll just go ahead and do the adventure. It's all part of the deal.
Right. Keep that money coming in. Lynn Skinner had something interesting to say. Is that I hated the baby voice that Robin used in the beginning. Made me want to hit the mute button when she spoke. I agree with that. Like,
this. It was almost like she had a little bit of a lisp when she would speak.
Right.
Oh, it was annoying. So annoying.
That drives me crazy.
Yes.
Like, I don't like the because I've seen that, and that's actually one of the things. Like, I knew somebody who was like that. A friend of mine, their daughter was like that, and I used to talk to them about it all the time. Like, talk to her. I even spoke to her about I don't want to come off that way. Like, you don't want to infantilize yourself, infantilize yourself, where you're just kind of becoming a baby, especially when you're trying to impress guys. Like, if a guy needs you to be a child in order for you to talk to him, then you need to step back and look at that dude because there's something wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
You should never be able to. You should never have to play down your intelligence. You should never have to play down your maturity. You should never have to play down your awareness of what's going on in the world. Erica MF $10 super chat. Brady even shoveled the ladies' cars out of the snow.
Oh, right. I forgot about
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They did their own.
Right. Well, Sister Wives, the anthropology instructor said that was successful polygamous men have certain characteristics which Cody doesn't possess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Brady would get out there and he would do the grunt work. Thank you, Erica. That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Because if Cody wasn't at your house, he's not shoveling your car out. And I think that you might get your car shoveled out as a result of him shoveling his car out.
Yeah. You know what? I've decided I'm definitely going to do a rewatch of that show. It was only 2 seasons, but I'm him hawing around about it. Should we not? I don't know, because there's no drama really to speak of, but I think anthropologically it would be interesting to watch the show and do it as a comparison. To look at it in the eyes of, to point out the things that somebody did differently than Cody did it. I think that would be fun. And to talk about, do we believe it? Like just to have a discussion on, how much of it, because some of it's for the show. How much of it's for the show? How much of it is they were really just like the Browns were in like episodes, the first couple episodes, how uncomfortable especially episode 1, where everyone's like, "Hi, Cody, how are you?" Oh, it's just so uncomfortable to watch. Right. And I think they were that way for a while at the beginning too, but the Brown family was able to kind of get over it easier than I think Brady's Williams, the Williams family was able to get over it, because I think that they just really weren't cut out to be reality TV people.
Right. Well, I think that there's also, because like I said before, I think that when you do embark on these types of adventures, you have to have something that makes them want to pull you onto the show. It's not enough that you have an interesting circumstance, but you have to be kind of a disaster. And I think that with Brady and them, part of the downfall of their show was the fact that they weren't as big a disaster as they might have thought they would be with 5 wives.
Yeah.
Tanya Johnson with the $2 super chat. Super sticker. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya.
Can't see it. My other one. But yeah. So it is what it is.
Yes, what it is.
I think it would be interesting. I think it would be interesting just to see the difference in, like, because I know that they had talked about getting that big house, because that was around the same time that Cody was able to build the 5 houses. They were able to get the 4 houses out in Vegas. That's when Brady was talking about building that one big house and trying to find that one big house for them all to live in one big house. And I think that they were kind of hoping that the show would take off, because that would have financed that big house for them. But unfortunately, it never happened. Never came to fruition.
No. I wonder, I would love, I mean, does an episode go by, James, where I don't say, I want a forensic accounting of the family? I just can't. It always comes back to that for me. Right. I'm just like dying to know
where that money went.
Where the money went and how much is left. And how is Cody going to live on what he has left now without having the extra income from the 3 wives that he was skimming from?
Yeah. I mean, that hurts. Like, I've done a comparison between, like, if you ever worked a job, and if they reduce your hours or cut your pay, like, you expect me to keep showing up doing the same thing, same level of work I was doing before with less money? And that's where Cody and Robin find themselves, because even though their money technically didn't change, by them not having access to the other wives' money, their money they took a serious hit.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there might be some maybe McKelty was right and they were supposed to release the episode earlier, but Cody and Robin put a kibosh on it because they trying to renegotiate their contract because they can't make it on the money that they paid them.
Yeah. Maybe McKelty was right. Maybe I am throwing her under the bus unnecessarily. Maybe she was given information it was going to come out, and I could see that Cody and Robin are holding out, going, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! There's no show without us."
Right.
Cody's saying that. Well, I mean, we brought the drama. We really brought the drama. Who's everyone talking about? Us. We need more money, and we're going to get less money because of the situation. I wonder if he would actually even admit that. Like, we were taking their money too. So
right.
we need you to give us more money. And so now it got pushed back to August like last year. Because I could have totally seen it coming out in the spring. Once they did it 4 years. I mean, there's been 14 years, and I think there was only 4 of them because it's 18 seasons. So only 4 years out of the 14 years did they do the double season, but they did do it. So it's not like it's a foreign concept that the show would go that way. But given the situation with Garrison, I thought that for sure they would come out with something in the spring. Right. Even if it was just addressing that, and it was just like a 2-episode, we're going to handle this head on. And, cause since the cameras were rolling at the time and the family agreed to allow things to continue, then maybe that would be its own snippet. Or maybe as opposed to that, they would keep that as part of the actual season that it's going to be aired in, but take some of the stuff away from the past, because they've got Gwendolyn's engagement party and the meeting of the whole drama with David meeting Cody, and that might be like, let's pull all the stuff from so far back in the past and put it in the spring so that we can start to catch up, and then it won't be so far away from life when we're airing things, because it really was disappointing last year. I mean, I have to say that by the time we saw a lot of things on TV, I'm like, yeah, know it. Yeah, I know it. I mean, even with Seeking Sister Wives, it was the same thing. It's like, how amazing would it have been if we found out live while we watched the show that Danielle was pregnant? I mean, golden. The internet would have been ablaze the next day. Instead, it was a trickle in that kept leading up to it. And eventually, no matter, you can't put your head in the sand anymore, you're going to know about it because it gets out there and everything. And how did it get out? Because they were a year behind. The child was like going off to kindergarten by the time TLC came around and aired the stuff. It's like, how long can you keep it a secret? So like, they need to get their act together, TLC, honestly.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of the thing to it. Like, I'm not a big fan of prequels. Like, so, and that's what I feel like I'm watching habitually with with some of the TLC shows, is that like, I know what's going to happen because I've already seen the movie, but now you're going to go back like, how did this all take place? Like, I watched Christine and David get married. I don't really need to watch them date because I know how it was going. Like, oh, I'm so nervous going on my first date. Like, that's your husband. Like, I don't need to see the first date.
Yeah, it's meaningless content at this point.
Right. Even McKelty, like, I think they're going to show her having the twins.
Right. Who cares?
Your kids are like 3. Like, what are we doing?
They're off in kindergarten too.
Yeah, I know they're fine. Like, it's like, oh, it's scary because something's going on. Like, you're fine. Like,
yeah, we know they're fine. We've seen them walking around and
Right. So I agree. Like, I think that it would have been a good springboard. That way they could have used the content that they had. I still hold out that, with the way they rushed out the look back and the talk back and the Christine's wedding, and they did it in a compressed time frame, I thought for sure they must have had something cooking for the springtime. Because otherwise it makes no sense that you would go from basically December, early January, all the way through the summer, all the way to the end of the summer. Like, you just wasted a ton of content. Yeah.
No sense. And to force all of us, like, on Christmas Eve and Christmas, like, This was like right in the height of the holidays. Like life was really busy. And I'm like, again, it's on what? 2 or 3 times a week? I'm like, what's going on? I got people coming over. I've got things to go to. I got gifts to get. I go, And it was the same thing with me. I'm like, wow, they're really playing catch up now. So we're going to be caught up for next season. But no, it was just all these extra talk back, look back, another talk back, another look back, another talk back, another, like a wedding, another wedding. And I'm like, okay, all right. But are we catching up?
Right.
Yeah, no.
And this is actually kind of reflective of one of the things you talked about before with being unclear as far as the time frame and how things are kind of coming together, because they're now taking some of the things that they were doing in the book and they're applying it to the show, because you're starting to mess with the timelines, because you can't nail down when exactly something happened, because we're now going back and forward through time to try to figure out what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah.
Was this Erica MF $2 super chat? For your information, Brady has the big house. Jenny, please rewatch.
All right, I will. You got it, Erica MF.
From what I remember, they had the big block house that was like he basically divided it into 4 separate homes. They were all kind of together, and
it almost was like a motel.
Additional. Yeah. So he did have kind of a big house, but I think he wanted to do, like, they were looking at purchasing like a big, huge mansion that they were going to buy, and then try to figure out how to get everybody in it. The problem they had is the same problem that the Brown family have, is that they don't make 4 or 5 individual apartments in a place unless you're buying an apartment complex. Like it just doesn't exist. So you won't have a big single family home with 5 individual houses in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the only way you get that is if you build it.
Right. And then you have zoning issues.
Right. Right.
You can't just do whatever you want to. It has to be approved given that situation. I heard recently that his construction company, remember they would show his construction company getting different jobs and that he did construction building polygamous homes, that was like the focus of what his business was. But it has since folded up, which is probably partly COVID and partly polygamy is just not as cool. People are onto it now that we have all the shows. I'm like, I don't know if it's such a good thing. It's not working out for anybody. And he is down in Haiti building houses.
Oh, is
now. Yeah. So I don't know if he's he's obviously not making much. So I don't know if he's kind of doing it just as a humanitarian kind of situation or if it's a permanent situation. I have no details about it, but it was some article I was reading said that he is spending time now in Haiti building homes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I would love an update.
Yeah. That would be his YouTube channel. Tanya Johnson with the $5 super chat. Last season's wrap-up interview episodes were so disappointing. Bring on My Life After Sister Wives, the TV series.
There you go. Yes. I would love that. Absolutely. They were so disappointing. They need a better interviewer. I don't know. People are hypothesizing that Suki didn't push enough to get answers from them because they would just walk off. And all I think is, okay, so let them walk off. There's television right there. Like the man who can't have his feet held to the fire. Like if you're going to finally hold him to the fire. I mean, I did think that the one good thing about last season in terms of TLC's production staff, and I've got nothing good to say about them, but I will say this, the one good thing that they did was they showed a little bit of the behind the scenes. So they were showing where normally they would clip in all of the couch interviews, all the interviews that were at the very end of the season, they were showing them walking in, they were showing them talking between clips. So you were seeing authentic. I bet they had no idea any of that was going to be on the film. So the whole I can't. How do you turn this thing off? I can't. Drama of it all. I'm sure she had no idea that they were going to put that on TV and make her look a fool. And Cody going off and being angry with the producers and that too. And I was here for it because I'm like, I am convinced he's had that attitude this whole time, and they have shown him in the most positive light. And I feel like the producers are finally caught up to the fact that white people are watching this so much is not because they think he's amazing and they have this fantastic family that's functioning so well. It's because it's not. And he's a large part of what the problem is. And so I think that now they're kind of like, okay, gloves off. We're just going to show him as he is, and we're not going to try to protect him anymore. And I think that made for good TV.
Maybe that's part of the reason why they weren't going to do it. Like, you guys tell me. Because I, when it comes to stuff like that, I think that there's a part of it that they don't have to show that. Like TLC probably did hide it between the Robin trying to turn the machine off, the pad off. Cody sitting there saying, I watched this 20 times and I hate talking about it and I'm not going to talk about it no more, and yelling at the producers. And even with him talking to Janelle and trying to talk to the camera, I'm sure that's stuff that he's done before, but it says a lot when the production team says, you know what, the hell with them, put it on and let everybody else see it. It says a lot because they can either make you look like a hero or a heel.
Right. And I feel like they've been in this long enough that, and TLC has enough things that are successful that, yes, this made a lot of money. It hasn't always made a lot of money, but in the past season or two, really, I guess COVID was only 2 or 3 seasons ago on TLC. I feel like they're at the position that they're going to call his bluff. So if he's like, I'm just not going to do this anymore, that they'll be like, okay, because this is good TV for us now. We're going to show it like it really is. And if you're not a part of it, all right, you can go. He's never going to go. He needs that paycheck. He needs that money, and he needs his ego to be fed. He needs to continue to be on television. So he would probably maybe try to farm it to somebody else, but what's he going to farm? Him and Robin? Who's going to watch that?
Right.
We want to see the whole family. We want to see the kids. We want to see, like that. We want to see what happened after the divorce. We want to see where did Mary and Joe. I will say also in that couch interview, I loved Mary, and I've been hard on Mary a lot because she's never been my Robin hasn't been my favorite, but Mary was really delightful in the in-between scenes on that. Christine was too. Christine was very funny. She was silly as she's talking to the producers in between and making jokes and all that. And she'd be like, we're going to talk about what? And they're like, is that okay? And she's like, yeah. It was a whole different, it was a wonderful dichotomy from Robin freaking out. I can't talk about it. And Christine being like, oh, really? We're going to talk about this? Oh, okay. Let's go. Like, I just loved it. And Mary was so funny and how she was laughing and she couldn't figure out how to make the iPad work. And she's like, I don't get these. I don't understand. I was just laughing when I was watching it. I really, really, really enjoyed that. I did. I feel like it was a peek behind the curtain a little bit at him. And it made me really appreciate Mary more by seeing that too, because I really like to see that fun, silly side of her. And I think that within the framework of the family, she's lost the fun, silly side of Mary. I mean, we really never saw it because they were already, by the time the show began, she was having problems with Cody. And so we never really got to see much of it. Her and Christine a little bit would kind of, but I think we're kind of doing it for the camera when they would like chase after each other and whatnot. It didn't feel very authentic when you watched it. So that was nice. I mean, if TLC, if you're watching,
they're not watching. I don't want the reality of what happens with the production team and what they go through, and I think that that's part of it too. Is that they also want to show what the production team is putting up with regard to producing a show with them, because they are a little volatile.
Yes, breaking the third wall is in now. Like a lot of shows are doing it, and it really is the best the best part of the show. And if TLC was smart, and if they really wanted it, well, if they're not smart and they obviously don't want to make as much money as possible, or they'd catch up. They'd have more sister wife stuff out there. So they're dumb and they're not going to do this. But if they really wanted to make a mint, they would have a behind the scenes making of Sister Wives, a whole series, 18 episodes long, where they go through the 18 seasons and for one episode per season of all the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So like really sweet, lovely moments that we didn't get a chance to see, because any new footage is fun. But then also the personalities behind the scene. And having that, and talk about riveting television. Oh my goodness. I would rewatch it 5 times probably.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that might be something that they told them, like, because realistically, with the popularity of the show and the fact that they do own, they do own the footage that they shoot. So technically, they could tell Robin and go to like, we don't need you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that could have been a hammer that they used to pull them back in, because we don't need you. If you don't want to shoot the show, that's fine. We'll just use the lost footage or the recently found footage or the unaired footage, and we'll. You think they hate you now? You know, because they have enough material to swing either way. You know, they probably turn stuff against Christine and Mary and Janelle, all of them.
Yeah.
But, like, you think they don't like you now. Wait till we show them this. Wait till they get a load of this. When you didn't think the cameras were rolling, or we didn't air it because it would have made you look so bad that we couldn't put you on TV anymore. And so good luck farming it out to Bravo or or, you know, one of the other reality show platforms after we get finished torching your personality and your character.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we kept a lot of it. That we were good to you, Robin. We've been very good to you, and I know you were upset last season because we showed a little stuff in between, and because we showed the stuff in between, you were also really upset when you had to sit down on the couch and do the interview stuff. Like you wanted no part to do with that, which made you look that much worse on top of it. But we have so much that we could show. That they probably have them exactly where they want them. So use that leverage, TLC.
Right.
Come on.
Well, they have the stuff that's like not them crying. Like right now, the only thing you have is Robin throwing temper tantrums. They probably have this stuff where she's actually saying stuff, and she's giving her opinion, or she's being assertive, or she's refusing to do stuff. Yeah. Like now she tried to play the innocent, I'm naive, I don't know what's going on. But we have I'm sure they have the footage where like we showed this, people would get a taste of who you really are. It'd be a wrap. So I mean, if they don't want to play, you have it. So use what you got.
I would love it. Riveting television. Fantastic. I mean, for all of them. I mean, behind the scenes for everybody would be great. Now the cameras were rolling the whole time. So it's not like they're hidden cameras and you're exposing something that you shouldn't have exposed. It literally is footage when they knew the cameras were running. So it's completely legit. I don't feel like it's nefarious to say we want to see the in-between stuff that was going down. But although I guess you could say it like maybe they didn't know that the leading up to, okay, we're going to start now. The stuff before that might get aired too. But I mean, you have to be a fool to think that you can, because I am sure there are times that they walked in and they're like, okay, we're going to talk about Mary now. And they're like, oh, honestly. Okay, hold on. Give me a second.
Right.
Okay.
I hate her. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But I just say,
yeah, she's you know, we're having a little struggles, but we're working through it, and you know, family first, and you know, and all the mantra and all the lines that they would do, and it would be great to see the real line that came out ahead of time. Or Christina's driving me nuts. If she says one more word, I can't hear it again. You know, just whatever. It would just be lovely to hear.
Well, I don't think it would be nefarious from the respect of until the episodes air. And they put them together, they edit them and put them together. They don't know what they're going to show on the show. So technically, even the lore that we currently operate off of as far as, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. As far as what happened in Sister Wives, technically, if they have other things, that's all fair game.
Yeah.
Because any of it could have been on any of the episodes that they had. It just didn't, maybe it didn't fit into the narrative that they were trying to tell for the particular show. But if they have it, they can use it however they see fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely like, it'd be upset, it'd be crazy. I get it, like from the cast members' perspective, it could be upsetting because you thought that had already been put to bed.
Right.
Now you have to deal with it again. But
yeah.
it's, it's all's fair in love and production. So
I love that line. All's fair in love and production. Yeah, that's true. I'm sure they thought many of those stories that the chapter was closed, book closed. Right. We've now moved on. I did that. We already had to relive it in the interviews while we sat down and talked about it, but like we're done now. So to bring it up again, I think would hit a nerve in Cody. That would be amazing.
yeah. You thought he was cussing before, stuttering and spitting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what were your last thoughts on the chapter that we covered tonight with Janelle?
Yeah, that's it. I have no other notes on it. It was pretty straightforward. Yeah, no big revelations. That came out of it. How about you?
Well, next, well, I think that, like I said, I think it was a very general chapter. I think it was like probably the smallest chapter so far in the book.
Yeah.
The shortest by far.
Mm-hmm.
And she really didn't say a whole lot. There's not a whole lot to be gathered from it. There's some innuendo there. There's some things that kind of give us a little bit of insight if you can kind of take one thing and put it with another thing.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like, she's not throwing anybody under the bus. She's not really spilling any tea. She's not really coming out saying that this person or that person is failing in this particular way. Yeah. She's just kind of riding the tide. And if anything, again, she kind of strikes me as a person who was involved but not quite involved. Mm-hmm. So her perspective on things might be a little different. Mm-hmm. But next week we have chapter 11, and we'll be talking about Christine. And I'm sure that chapter will be different. Mm-hmm. And of course, Robin's chapter after that will be insane because she's going to come in as the authority of all things and tell us everything we need to know about raising children. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
But did you have anything going on this week or anything we should be looking out for?
Well, I was really lame last week and I didn't get a video out, so I apologize because I know I said it. So there's no way I can go another week without getting another video out for you guys. Right. So that will be coming out soon. We're finishing up the book. I think we have 2 chapters left. So Thursday night at 7 p.m. Will be the second to the last chapter in the book. We'll go over that. And I keep telling my people, and I haven't done it yet, but I will. I'm trying to get my life together. I'm going to get a poll on my community channel for what should we do next on our Thursday nights once we complete this book. So actually we have 3 more weeks because there's, believe 2 more chapters and then there's, epilogue at the end with Cody. Right. But we were discussing a couple different directions and different ways that we could go. And I don't know. I'm thinking my 5 wives might be an interesting way to go. Yeah, I got to figure out how to go about. Do we just do the audio and do it live together and then pause and talk about it, or do we tell everybody to watch it ahead of time and discuss? So I don't know. I have to figure out because I know I can't just play the video. We'll see.
All right.
How about you? What do you got going on?
Same thing. I gotta get some videos out. I have did some changes in my stuff. I got some new equipment I'm trying to work through. So I'll be releasing a video this week. I have to, and then of course tomorrow I'll be doing Sister Lives. We're doing a couple episodes. Oh, before we go, I got to make sure I remember because last week I think I forgot. But I want to make sure we give a huge shout out to the mods, folks taking care of us while we're busy chit-chatting away. Rochelle J on my side, as well as Lizzie B. And then I saw, I think you had Lynn Skinner.
And Lynn Skinner's in the house over here. Yep. She's my diehard on Sunday nights.
Okay. Okay. And big shout out to, let's see, Scarlett, $1.99 super sticker. Thank you, Scarlett. And Tanya Johnson, $5 super chat. For your information, Thursday at 10 is Australian East Coast, Friday at 9 a.m.
Ah. Thursday at 10 is East Coast, Friday. So it's 8 a.m. for you because I do Thursday. Oh, no. Thursday at 10, I do 7. So that's 6 a.m. Wow. That would be early. If you don't want to get up, I understand.
Right.
Can always watch.
A rewatch.
Always a rewatch. You can go in and watch the recording of it. I don't blame you. Or maybe that'd be the way to wake up in the morning. You just have it on and you slowly wake up as you hear everyone talking about it. Thank you both for the super chats.
Right. Silly points. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming in, hanging out. We'll be back next week talking about Christine and this craziness. Hopefully everybody had a good time. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves. Next week I want to start something a little different. I want to have like a little affirmation moment. So if you guys want to like you guys have any struggles or whatever, you can always put that in the chat and we'll support you in your struggles, because I believe that we are here for self-improvement as well as to support one another and to, of course, for entertainment, like, because YouTube should not be stressful. So we can help you in any way. We'll try that. That's all I have. That's my take. I'm James. This has been My Take on Reality, and
I'm Jenny from Senior Perspective.
All right, make sure you check out both our channels. And before you guys go, make sure you hit those like buttons. And if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening and have a fabulous week coming up.
That's right. And have a great morning over there in Australia.
Yeah, right.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good day.